If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 201, Kishin Absurd Plan. While the video game Doom has been making waves in the computer industry, in Toshima Ward, Tokyo, Japan, Shin convened a meeting at Kishin headquarters. As the executives gathered, he announced, "Starting today, I've decided to place Kishin Electronics under the umbrella of my newly created company, Kishin Rules. I will serve as its chairman, and I'll appoint a CEO for Kishin Rules. Additionally, the new CEO for Kishin Electronics will be determined through a vote among you." This revelation startled the executives. The young CEO had established a new company that would now be the primary entity for all things Kishin. Observing the executives' surprised expressions, Shin smiled and shared, "To be honest, I've been planning this for a while. I've already acquired a building in the prosperous city of Minato, Tokyo, for the headquarters of our main company, Kishin Rules." Upon hearing this, one executive couldn't help but say, "Isn't acquiring a building in the Minato ward quite expensive? Is it truly cost-effective to have a building situated there?" Similar concerns echoed among the other executives. Shin smiled and replied, "It was before the recession." Pausing to gauge their surprised expressions, he continued, "Some of you seem to forget that post-recession, land prices in Minato significantly dropped. Seizing the opportunity, I consistently purchased land and a building in Minato." The executives were left speechless after hearing Shin's words. Indeed, it was foreseeable that if Japan's economy recovered, the price of land in Minato would significantly increase. This trend was mirrored in other cities where land prices had plummeted, prompting Shin to acquire land in several prosperous areas of Tokyo. Particularly in the Akihabara district, Shin secured a significant portion of the future electric town. He strategically deployed negotiators to deal with property owners in the area, leveraging the fact that Akihabara wasn't as renowned compared to Shin's previous life. Consequently, most property owners agreed to the terms. To fund these ventures, Shin obtained a loan of approximately 210 billion yen, equivalent to about $1.4 billion, from various Japanese banks offering low interest rates. This substantial sum was utilized to purchase a considerable amount of land in Akihabara, precisely 148,000 SQM, a feat accomplished within a year since the onset of the economic recession in Japan in 1992. With that, Shin still has approximately $374 million remaining from the loans secured from various banks in Japan. However, this remaining capital is earmarked for acquiring additional land in Akihabara. Simultaneously, Kishin's acquisition of land in various cities, particularly the substantial land holdings in Akihabara, drew widespread attention. It even piqued the interest of the Japanese government. The Ministry of Finance found itself perplexed about Kishin's determined efforts to acquire land in Akihabara. High-ranking officials discussed among themselves, does Kishin have specific plans for Akihabara? Nevertheless, they acknowledged Kishin's keen foresight and recognized the potential of Akihabara, strategically located in the heart of Tokyo. In light of this, the Japanese government recognized the potential of Akihabara. The government sector engaged in discussions about the district's future, concurrently addressing Kishin's extensive land acquisition in Akihabara and its potential impact on the local community and surrounding businesses. However, amidst these discussions, some officials deemed Shinro Suzuki as eccentric for investing in Akihabara, a venture they perceived as lacking guaranteed profits. They expressed concerns that it might be a waste of money, yet, at the same time, couldn't help but lament the mindset of the wealthy. The thoughts and extravagant ideas of the wealthy were aspects that ordinary officials like them found challenging to grasp. Following Kishin's high-profile land acquisition in Akihabara, some high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Finance reached out to Shinro Suzuki. However, Shin responded in a manner that left the officials unable to comprehend his plan for the land. Despite the confusion, the officials were relieved to learn that Shin had no intentions of causing disruption to the local community and surrounding businesses, as long as they aligned with Kishin's accord. Meanwhile, in the Sazama mansion, news of Kishin's high-profile land acquisitions in various Tokyo cities, and particularly the substantial spending on Akihabara land, reached the ears of Sazama and Kumiko. Sazama, engrossed in playing Kishin's new video game, Final Fantasy IV, was interrupted by a man in a sleek black suit who brought him up to speed on Kishin's recent maneuvers. What? Kishin acquired thousands of square meters in the Akihabara district. Sazama nearly choked on his tea as he exclaimed. Kumiko hurriedly patted Sazama's back as they both turned their attention to the formally dressed man with sleek hair, who slightly bowed while conveying, "Yes, this is the information my team and I recently obtained. The man paused, observing the dilated eyes and shocked expressions of Sazuma and Kumiko, then continued, "From what I've gathered, Kishin has been steadily acquiring land in Akihabara for a few months before it culminated in the recent acquisition of thousands of square meters. The exact amount wasn't disclosed, but according to our intel, Kishin has acquired even more, possibly reaching up to 50,000 square meters or even beyond." Upon hearing this, Sazuma and Kumiko were visibly stunned. Upon learning about their youngest grandson's businesses and companies, Sazuma and Kumiko decided to stay informed about anything related to Kishin, allowing them to monitor their youngest grandson's ventures. While they couldn't influence his business decisions, they could at least keep track of his progress. However, they found themselves periodically bewildered and shocked by Kishin's, or rather, their youngest grandson's, strategic moves. This youngest grandson of theirs proved to be more ambitious than they had ever been. Who in their right mind would acquire tens of thousands of square meters in a single district? Yet, Akihabara district, being in the heart of Tokyo, held tremendous potential, making the acquisition of such vast land a promising move for future investments. However, the challenge lay in the cost of developing the land. While Sazuma and Kumiko were uncertain about their youngest grandson's exact plans, they suspected Kishin intended to construct a planned building there for various reasons. The looming concern was the financial burden associated with construction. If their youngest grandson aimed to venture into the apartment business, the risk was evident. Although the land prices had significantly decreased during the recession, Tokyo's real estate market was gradually rebounding, making the piece of land in Akihabara relatively expensive. Over time, as the cost of living in such a prime location increased, it remained uncertain whether Kishin could effectively attract tenants. What they weren't aware of, however, was Shin's intention to acquire the entire future electric town in Akihabara, totaling 300,000 SQM of land. Shin planned to transform it into a commercial hub, making the area popular. By having other companies rent space or advertise in the electric town Akihabara district once it attracted tourists and visitors, Shin aimed to generate income for sustained success. Chapter 202, Project for Akihabara. While reactions in the business world varied to Kishin's acquisition of land in the Akihabara district, the announcement of Shinro Suzuki founding a new company, Kishin Rules, stirred interest. Notably, Kishin Rules is not a subsidiary but the new flagship company for Kishin. Kishin Electronics, the former main company, will now operate under Kishin Rules, alongside several Kishin subsidiaries. Kishin Rules will be headquartered in the Minato Ward, Tokyo, a district more prosperous than Toshima Ward, where Kishin Electronics, the previous main company, was located. Meanwhile, employees at Kishin Electronics, located in Toshima Ward, felt disheartened as Kishin transitioned its main company to Kishin Rules. However, a select few from Kishin Electronics were chosen to join the staff of Kishin Rules. Interestingly, many of these employees already had residences near the former headquarters of Kishin Electronics in Toshima Ward, either renting apartments or owning houses in the vicinity. Now, for employees who were merely renting apartments and now have to work at Kishin Rules in the Minato Ward, it poses a mild inconvenience. However, for those who already own property near the former main headquarters of Kishin Electronics, this change is a significant disruption. Despite this, they console themselves with the thought that being selected to work for the new main company, Kishin Rules, is a source of happiness. While some find Shinro Suzuki's actions, creating a new main company and relocating to a more prosperous and expensive city, inconvenient and unsettling, Shin gave considerable thought to the decision of establishing a new main company and relocating his headquarters. He consulted with experts and concluded that creating Kishin Rules and moving the main headquarters to Minato was a sound decision. Minato, being a prosperous city in Tokyo, offers efficient access to transportation, construction, and various amenities. Moreover, it attracts many young professional talents. Despite Kishin's reputation, these young talents often opt for other Japanese corporations, as simply being located in Minato grants them prestige and reputation. That's one of the many reasons why Shin chose to locate his main company in Minato Ward to bask in the same prestige as other esteemed companies situated in this renowned district. Meanwhile, Shin is presently in the Akihabara district, strategizing for the future of the land he acquired there. The hundreds of thousands of square meters Shin purchased are in the electric town of Akihabara, a famous and prosperous area in Shin's previous life. In Shin's previous life, Electric Town was the hub for electronics product stores, anime and manga shops, and various pop culture attractions. It served as a popular destination for tourists worldwide, renowned for its vibrant atmosphere and diverse array of activities. However, in the present, Shin observes that there is already an electric town in this world, although it lacks the same level of fame. Presently, it stands as the primary center for electronics sales and repairs. This is where various Japanese electronics, such as TVs, refrigerators, rice cookers, SKES and KES, Game Boy, and other Tora and Suzuki consoles, were purchased. It's also a renowned area for people to get their electronic products repaired. Currently, Shin is engaged in discussions with a real estate developer and project manager at a cafe, seated together at one table. Sipping on his Ctto, Shin expressed, "I aim to develop these land areas into attractions, starting specifically with this spot." He pointed to a picture depicting an old electronics store that has already closed down and continued, "I envision a manga shop to be constructed here." Meanwhile, the real estate developer, Hisameu, and the project manager, Naga Ishiya, were somewhat perplexed about how a manga shop could contribute to becoming an attraction. However, they refrained from opposing Shin's words and plans, recognizing it was his investment. Real estate developer Hisameu simply nodded and remarked, "Transforming Electric Town into an attraction, specifically for tourists." Shin nodded in agreement, stating, "Exactly. In essence, it will be an attraction." Project manager Naga Ishiya also nodded and inquired, "May I learn more about the project you have in mind for the land area, Mr. Suzuki?" Real estate developer Hisameu also nodded, intrigued by what the young man had in mind. However, given Shinro Suzuki's fame and wealth as the owner of Kishin, a globally renowned company, Hisameu hesitated to inquire, expecting Shinro Suzuki to be arrogant and proud. The real estate developer and the project manager had anticipated that Shinro Suzuki might not provide a detailed project plan and perhaps would leave it to them to figure out. To their surprise, Shinro Suzuki responded with a smile, pulling out a paper filled with words. "My vision for this land area is to create a commercial hub with electronics stores, anime and manga shops, and even a billboard here," Shin explained, pointing to the detailed list on the paper. He then presented it to the real estate developer and project manager for review. Initially uncertain about Shin's verbal description, the real estate developer and project manager were left somewhat speechless as they perused the detailed lists on the paper. Examining the lists, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that developing and constructing these plans would require at least billions of dollars. While the real estate developer and project manager had some expectations considering Kishin's projects involving large land areas in Akihabara district or electric town, it still came as quite a surprise to them. Subsequently, they engaged in a discussion with Shinro Suzuki about the project, and upon estimation, they concluded that the demolition of the existing building would take a few months. Additionally, the construction of the new buildings was projected to span at least 2 to 3 years, if not more. Meanwhile, Shin remains unfazed by the potential cost reaching billions of dollars. He is confident in securing loans from various banks, and with the upcoming release of new video games for SKES and Game Boy, profits are expected to pour in. Moreover, real estate has always been a sound investment. Even if the envisioned commercial hub were to face challenges, owning assets remains a beneficial venture for Shin. He convinces himself that failure is not an option, armed with ample resources to ensure success by elevating Electric Town's prominence with his IPs and renowned franchises. In his perspective, it's akin to creating a destination like Disneyland or Universal Studios, renowned globally. Shin, being opportunistic, recognizes the need to capitalize on his IPs and franchises. Chapter 203, Potential. In the meantime, Kishin has unveiled a slew of new video games, including Super Mario RPG, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Breath of Fire, and Pokémon Yellow. In a typical household. Finally! A new day with fresh Kishin video games! Exclaimed a young man, his excitement evident upon seeing the advertisement for Kishin's latest releases. One particular highlight that grabbed his attention was Super Mario RPG, as well as Pokémon Yellow. Being a devoted Pokémon fan, he was eager to dive into the new Pokémon video game. He's not alone. In one of the Pokémon cafes constructed by Kishin a few months ago, several people clad in Pokémon merchandise have gathered. A young woman named Aira, donned in misty attire and accompanied by a Pikachu and various Pokémon plush toys, engaged in conversation with her female friends. "Did you hear? Pokémon has a new video game coming out." Her friend Kazu nodded and remarked, "Yeah, it's based on Pikachu." "Oh, I've always been a fan of Pikachu. Let's buy it tomorrow." "Absolutely." While the boys in the same Pokémon cafe, engrossed in their Pokemon game, exchanged thoughts. Oh? Another Pokemon video game? I spotted it in the advertisement. The gameplay seems no different from Pokemon Red and Blue. Yet, just a different Pokemon this time. Hopefully, they release something more interesting, maybe a new Pokemon. Meanwhile, some Tora and Suzuki fans expressed discontent with Kishin's new Pokemon video game based on Pikachu. A new Pokemon game that isn't any different from Pokemon Red and Blue. Yet, I think Tasuki's Mecho Battle video game was better. I agree. Many critics of Kishin believe that the company relies solely on the popularity of the Pokemon anime for the sales of their Pokemon video games, which appear almost identical to one another except for the introduction of a different Pokemon as an in-game character. Despite the criticism, the sales of Kishin's video games remain unaffected. Upon each new release, sales surge rapidly, contributing to a notable rise in Kishin's overall video game sales. Everyone thought Kishin would stop releasing new video games this October, but they were surprised when Kishin unveiled Kid Icarus, of Myths and Monsters and Tales of Phantasia. Upon the release of these games, Saw Arita and other video game professionals became alert. Why? Particularly because of Kid Icarus. It left a lasting impression on video game professionals as an extremely challenging game. They rushed to purchase it for review, and their excitement grew when Kishin announced the release of Pokemon trading card game in December, along with a few other video games. Meanwhile, in the USA, Game Boy was gradually being adopted by older generations for playing Tetris, proving to be a significant boost to Kishin's Game Boy sales. As the current CEO of Newland, Archie Scott, observed the widespread popularity of Tetris, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret, especially when he noticed his wife engrossed in playing Tetris on her Game Boy. When his wife inquired about Tetris, Archie Scott's regret deepened. "Honey, doesn't your father's company, Newland, which you inherited, own the rights to Tetris? You must be profiting from the Tetris on Game Boy, right?" Archie Scott could only offer a wry smile as he explained to his wife that he had already sold the rights to Tetris to Kishin. Upon hearing this, his wife felt disappointed. Typically, Archie Scott didn't delve into the company's business with his wife. However, now he explained, saying, "Honey, you know that Newland was struggling at that time. If I hadn't sold the rights of Tetris to Kishin, Newland would probably have filed for bankruptcy." His wife experienced a bit of relief upon learning this. Simultaneously, Archie Scott recognized the potential of video games. Recalling the existing library of Newland video games that they still owned, Archie Scott couldn't help but contemplate the idea of developing improved versions of the old video game collection at Newland. Inspired by this idea, Archie Scott promptly grabbed a piece of paper and began outlining his plan. Currently, Kishin stood as the sole open platform in the USA, providing independent video game developers the chance to create their own games for the Kishin platform. Additionally, news of the Tora and Suzuki alliance in the video game sector, operating as an open platform in the Japanese market, was set to expand to the USA soon. Archie Scott couldn't help but view this as a significant opportunity. With the burgeoning video game market, it seemed inevitable that numerous games would be developed. As long as the market avoided being flooded with subpar games, it had the potential to thrive through the innovation fostered by the competition between Kishin and Tora Suzuki. Even some brokers and investors on Wall Street recognized the potential of video games and began investing in video game development companies. They could already anticipate the substantial market in the industry. Although the video games industry couldn't be directly compared to other rapidly growing sectors like the cellular phone market, it was evident that the video games industry was not to be underestimated. With current estimates placing the number of casual players at around 230 to 280 million people, video games were particularly popular in first world countries that could afford video game consoles and games, such as the USA, Japan, and various European nations. Especially in the United Kingdom, the most popular video game in Europe, including the UK, was Super Mario World. It sold approximately 14 million copies in just 1 year. In a certain place in the UK, within a particular small apartment, a beautiful woman named Joanne Kathleen was engrossed in writing. Inspired by video games she had played, such as The Legend of Zelda and Tetris, she found herself captivated by the fantasy worlds and engaging gameplay they offered. While Joanne typically enjoyed chess, the rising popularity of video games made her aware of the fantastic experiences modern games could provide. One thing was certain: video games served as a significant inspiration for the book she was currently writing. Given that one of Kishin's subsidiaries in London was a bookstore named Rookie, which specialized in releasing Japanese books translated into English, Joanne felt that Kishin Bookstore would be a good choice. She observed that they provided more favorable offers compared to other book publishers. Chapter 204, Comic CEO. Meanwhile, Oryo Masayoshi sat in a Michelin-starred restaurant, preparing to meet Marvel Comics CEO, Reggie Anderson. As Oryo Masayoshi sliced through the tender beef on his plate, savoring each bite, he experienced instant pleasure on his taste buds. Having lived in the USA with his family for about a year, Oryo and his family had gradually adapted to the American lifestyle. He became so accustomed to it that he gained some weight, as did his wife. This prompted him to start exercising regularly. Now, Oryo Masayoshi found himself tasked with the time-consuming responsibilities that his boss, Shinro Suzuki, had once again delegated to him. His mission? To engage in discussions with the current CEO of Marvel Comics, a company grappling with challenges as it consistently loses ground to DC Comics. The latter benefits from the backing of Warner Bros., effectively promoting iconic comics like Batman and Superman. From Oryo Masayoshi's perspective, investing in a struggling company like Marvel Comics was neither desirable nor profitable in his opinion. However, he followed his boss's orders without complaint. After all, Shinro Suzuki had led Kishin to its current success, and Oryo Masayoshi had witnessed some of his boss's miracles. Take, for instance, the Jurassic Park movie, a blockbuster that surpassed $1 billion in box office earnings. Even Hollywood film critics marveled at how an inexperienced studio could achieve such success. Some credited Kishin's marketing, while others pointed to CGI, but the undeniable fact was that Jurassic Park was a triumph. As 20 minutes ticked by, Oryo Masayoshi furrowed his brows while waiting for the CEO of Marvel to arrive. Eventually, Reggie Anderson, clad in formal attire with impeccable grooming, appeared alongside a young man carrying a portfolio of documents. Observing this, Oryo Masayoshi promptly stood up with respect. Despite his time in the USA, he retained Japanese traits, outwardly displaying humility and respect even though internally, he was growing increasingly annoyed. Being from Kishin, a considerably wealthier company than Marvel, the tardiness of the struggling company's CEO grated on him. If not for the responsibility entrusted to him by Shinro Suzuki to handle the acquisition procedure for Marvel Comics and Suzuki's genuine interest in the company, Oryo Masayoshi wouldn't bother with maintaining such outward respect. While pondering these thoughts, Oryo Masayoshi offered a warm and kind smile as he shook hands with Reggie Anderson, who nodded and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Masa." Reggie Anderson forgot and discreetly glanced at his secretary carrying the documents. The secretary subtly gestured with his mouth, forming the words "SA" and "Yoshi." Oryo Masayoshi faintly caught wind of the exchange but chose not to reveal it. Reggie Anderson coughed and corrected himself, "Cough, Mr. Masakashi." Hearing this, Oryo Masayoshi couldn't help but feel a bit amused, especially as the secretary next to Reggie Anderson almost face-palmed himself. Oryo Masayoshi couldn't help but think, no wonder Marvel Comics was struggling. If this person were the CEO of any company, they'd probably struggle too. He gently corrected Reggie Anderson, "It's Masayoshi, Mr. Anderson." Reggie Anderson, feeling a bit embarrassed, responded, "Oh, I just had a sore throat. I meant Masayoshi." Oryo Masayoshi simply smiled and said, "No problem." Yet, deep inside, he assessed that Reggie Anderson had the personality to never admit even his minor mistakes. They took their seats and shared a table, with Reggie Anderson's secretary standing by his side. As the conversation began, Oryo Masayoshi initiated with light topics such as meal orders. Reggie Anderson, shamelessly, selected items from the menu, seemingly unfazed by the expectation that Oryo Masayoshi would foot the bill. In Reggie Anderson's mind, he thought, "I like the Japanese. They're so humble and kind that they're easy to take advantage of." Truth be told, Reggie Anderson's tardiness was a result of prioritizing more time with his mistress over the business discussion with Kishin. Reggie Anderson wouldn't have attended at all if not for Kishin's multimillion-dollar offer to purchase Marvel Comics. What sweetened the deal further was Kishin's alternative proposal, a discussion on bringing Marvel characters to the big screen, with Marvel Comics still retaining partial ownership under Reggie Anderson. Marvel Comics, originally a family business under the Goodman family, became Reggie Anderson's through marriage to the Goodman family's daughter. However, since Reggie Anderson assumed office, Marvel Comics faced a decline. Even the Goodman family, particularly the grandfather of Reggie Anderson's wife, expressed frustration at how Reggie was running the company. Regrets about entrusting the business to what they perceived as an irresponsible leader plagued the Goodman family. At present, Reggie Anderson was seeking Kishin's support to propel Marvel characters onto the big screen, aiming for business success to rival DC Comics. In addition to the option of selling the company, Reggie Anderson wished to leverage the presence of the Japanese individual before him. He intended to negotiate the voluntary adaptation of Marvel Comics into cinematic productions, demonstrating to the Goodman family his capability to enhance the popularity of Marvel characters with Kishin's assistance, ultimately boosting comic sales. With that, Reggie Anderson received his wine and remarked, "As you know, the primary business objective here is to offer Kishin the rights to our Marvel Comics characters for cinematic adaptation." Pausing as he twirled his wine, he continued, "We would be willing to grant Kishin the rights to our Marvel characters for an appropriate price." Excitement surged within Reggie Anderson. Not only would he profit from the proposed deal, but the promotion of Marvel Comics would also be free, all while earning profits with Kishin lending their rights. Upon hearing Reggie Anderson's proposal, Oryo Masayoshi frowned and responded, "Cough. I don't think Mr. Anderson has assessed the current situation of your company." Reggie Anderson, perplexed, furrowed his brows and asked, "What do you mean?" Oryo Masayoshi smiled and explained, "This meeting revolves around either Kishin acquiring Marvel Comics or the potential cinematic adaptation of Marvel characters. For the latter to happen, Kishin must purchase the full rights to specific Marvel comic characters in the Marvel Comics company that they desire for cinematic adaptation." Upon hearing Oryo Masayoshi's words, Reggie Anderson immediately realized that deceiving the Japanese individual was more challenging than he had anticipated. It seemed improbable, especially considering the challenging circumstances Marvel Comics was currently facing. Meanwhile, Reggie Anderson's secretary glanced at him with a touch of disdain. Truth be told, he harbored no fondness for Reggie Anderson, and the attempt to deceive a seasoned businessman seemed nothing short of a joke. Chapter 205, Kishin Acquisition of Marvel Comics. Upon hearing Oryo Masayoshi's words, Reggie Anderson furrowed his brows and questioned, "What does this mean? I thought you were here to assist Marvel Comics in promoting its characters." Oryo Masayoshi chuckled, shaking his head. "Not quite, Mr. Anderson. Marvel Comics, in my view, lacks the standing to engage in these negotiations on an equal footing, given its current struggles." Reggie Anderson was taken aback by Oryo Masayoshi's straightforwardness. Then, Oryo Masayoshi continued, "Kishin will either acquire the full rights to specific Marvel Comics characters or purchase Marvel Comics as a whole." Pausing to savor his steak, he added, "The decision is yours." Continuing, he remarked, "Marvel Comics couldn't even compete with DC Comics. Last year, your company's comic sales were in a significant decline, especially with Batman dominating the screens at Warner Bros." Reggie Anderson clenched his fists slightly, acknowledging the truth in Oryo Masayoshi's words, though he knew there was little he could do in response. Oryo Masayoshi chuckled, adding, "Not to mention that Marvel Comics' former writers and artists established their own company. In 1992, just the previous year, Image Comics, founded by these ex-Marvel talents, actually surpassed Marvel Comics in sales." Reggie Anderson, upon hearing this, became so infuriated that he gritted his teeth. The recollection of Marvel's former writers and artists forming Image Comics, which subsequently outperformed Marvel in sales, fueled his anger. Both Reggie Anderson and his secretary recognized that Oryo Masayoshi was underscoring the weakness of Marvel Comics in these negotiations. Insulted, Reggie Anderson retorted, "Do you believe Kishin is the sole interested party in acquiring our company? Marvel Comics can be sold to other companies aside from Kishin." Oryo Masayoshi simply smiled and replied, "We'll make sure our offer surpasses any from those companies, should they even exist." Observing the gravity of Reggie Anderson and his secretary's expressions, Oryo Masayoshi continued, "And, Mr. Anderson, you're not the sole decision-maker for Marvel Comics, your wife and the Goodman family still hold stakes in the company." Gritting his teeth, Reggie Anderson demanded, "What is Kishin willing to offer for Marvel Comics?" Sipping his wine, Oryo Masayoshi recalled Marvel Comics' current net worth and stated, "Given Marvel Comics' net worth of $85 million, according to our intel, Kishin is prepared to offer $95 million. How does that sound?" Reggie Anderson and his secretary weren't surprised by Oryo Masayoshi's precise knowledge of Marvel Comics' net worth, even though it was a private company. Reggie Anderson looked at Oryo Masayoshi, responding, "Let me discuss this with the executives and the Goodman family." Despite being chosen as CEO by the Goodman family, Reggie Anderson himself held shares, along with his wife, allowing him to retain his position despite perceived incompetence. Moreover, the executives within Marvel Comics sided with Reggie Anderson, despite their evident shortcomings in their work. Reggie Anderson chuckled quietly, curious to witness whether, after the sale to Kishin, the company could thrive under these seemingly lax executives. Even if Kishin decided to dismiss all executives, there remained an untalented group of writers and artists in their employ. Should Kishin opt for widespread layoffs due to incompetence, it would undoubtedly attract the media's attention. Considering Kishin's lack of experience in the comic industry, Reggie Anderson devised a plan to sell the company to Kishin and observe how well they would truly fare. Following that, Oreo Masayoshi nodded and departed the restaurant, leaving Reggie Anderson to finish the meal paid for with Oreo Masayoshi's money. Humph. Let's see if they can handle the comics industry, Reggie Anderson thought as he indulged in dessert, with his secretary by his side. In Reggie Anderson's view, if Kishin believed running a comic company was easy, they were mistaken. Kishin would soon realize the challenges of competing with DC Comics, backed by Warner Brothers. Even if Kishin had a successful first film named Jurassic Park, many saw it as mere luck. In just a few days after Oreo Masayoshi's meeting with Marvel Comics CEO Reggie Anderson, Kishin successfully acquired Marvel Comics for $100 million. Following the acquisition, Shin instructed Oreo Masayoshi to observe the Marvel Comics executives and hire UPS. After a few days of observation, Oreo Masayoshi reported his findings to Shin, who promptly ordered the termination of almost all Marvel Comics executives. Not stopping there, a significant number of employees were also let go, except for the writers and artists. The workforce at Marvel Comics was nearly entirely wiped out. Meanwhile, publishing and editorial director Stan Lee believed the actions taken by the new owner of Marvel Comics were beneficial. Initially, Stan Lee harbored concerns about the fate of Marvel Comics after its acquisition by another company, given the company's existing struggles with lethargic staff. To his surprise, Stan Lee witnessed Kishin's decision to dismiss the lazy executives and employees, and he found himself slightly taken aback yet supportive of the move. It felt akin to eliminating detrimental elements within the company. With Kishin's mass layoffs, they simultaneously began recruiting capable individuals to rejuvenate Marvel Comics. During this period, the terminated executives and employees from Marvel Comics found themselves being interviewed by various media outlets. News of Kishin's acquisition of Marvel Comics had already stirred discontent in Hollywood. However, when the media covered the extensive layoffs, criticism against Kishin spread not just within Hollywood but across the entire USA. So harsh. Firing people like that is such a horrible thing. I used to be a Kishin fan, but I lost respect for them when they did this. This is just bad. The news triggered discussions throughout the USA, with many expressing the sentiment that Kishin had made a poor decision. However, Kishin remained silent when approached by several media outlets seeking their side of the story. Shin advised Kishin USA to refrain from engaging with the media, emphasizing that participating in the media's tactics would only escalate the situation and elevate the case's popularity beyond its current state. Meanwhile, Shin, having successfully acquired Marvel Comics, felt a great sense of excitement. He also expanded the CGI company to meet the demand for producing Marvel character movies. Chapter 206, Microsoft FPS Video Game. The Kishin acquisition sparked a discussion during a Warner Brothers conference meeting. Frank Wilson raised a question, asking, "Is Kishin planning to challenge our DC characters on the screen?" The executives chuckled, and one remarked, "It seems that way." Marvel Comics has seen a decline in sales, even surpassed by Image Comics formed by Marvel's former writers and artists, another executive added, nodding. "I can't think of any other reason for Kishin to profit from such a acquisition unless they bring Marvel characters to the big screen," another executive agreed. Frank Wilson and the executives nodded in agreement. Frank continued, "It's not surprising. Kishin has been determined to establish itself in Hollywood, as seen in their ambitious and critically successful project, Jurassic Park. Acquiring Marvel Comics is a strategic move to compete with our DC characters adapted for the big screen." The executives concurred with his perspective. Following that, Frank Wilson chuckled, remarking, "Kishin is mistaken if they believe they can replicate the success of Jurassic Park considering Marvel Comics' inferior comics, which can't even be compared to DC Comics. I doubt Kishin will find the same success in this endeavor." The executives nodded in agreement with CEO Frank Wilson's words. Moreover, Kishin's recent mass firing at their newly acquired company, Marvel Comics, was a significant misstep, one executive commented, prompting laughter from CEO Frank Wilson and the other executives. The news of Kishin's substantial layoffs at Marvel Comics continued to generate discussions, remaining a hot topic and sparking debates among Americans. As a result, Kishin's sales experienced a slight decline during that period. However, despite criticism, Kishin strategically countered by releasing anime classics like Dragon Ball and Yu-Gi-Oh! This move captured the interest of some Americans, who became avid fans of these newly introduced anime series. In the following days, discussions about Kishin's layoffs at Marvel Comics gradually subsided. The sales of Kishin's video game consoles and games returned to stable figures. While some individuals still harbored negative sentiments towards Kishin, those attempting to reignite discussions about the company's controversial decisions found disappointment. People were no longer as interested, and the topic had lost its initial traction. Despite the waning discussion around Kishin's layoffs at Marvel Comics, the newly acquired company, the incident still had a lingering impact on Kishin's reputation. Consequently, some individuals in the USA shifted their preferences, opting to purchase video game consoles and games from Kishin's competitors, such as Toru Suzuki. In parallel, Shin planned another trip to the USA, aiming to meet with Stan Lee, the legendary creator behind iconic characters like Spider-Man, Captain America, Fantastic Four, and more. Initially informed by Oryo Masayoshi that Stan Lee was working in Marvel Comics, Shin, despite some expectations, hadn't anticipated encountering the man, the myth, the legend, Stan Lee, in this parallel world. Simultaneously, following the acquisition of Marvel Comics, Kishin delved into merchandise development, producing stuffed toys and figurines featuring Marvel characters. These actions aligned with the plan set forth by Chairman Shinro Suzuki of Kishin Rules. In the meantime, Microsoft approached Kishin regarding the release of the video game Doom on their platforms. Upon learning of this, Shin contemplated the situation, thinking that Microsoft might not be aware of his shares in Apple. Given his stakes in Apple, Shin made the decision not to assist Microsoft in regaining their sales. Without hesitation, Shin disagreed with Microsoft's offers. However, as time progressed, it was already early December 1993. Simultaneously, Shin attended to his few-months-old baby boy. Shinichi looked adorable as he played while sitting on Yoshi, a large stuffed toy. As Luigi and Zelda situated on the side, the golden retriever observed Shinichi playing, while the cat lounged lazily on the floor. Meanwhile, Myra prepared food as Shin engaged in playtime with Shinichi. Amidst the father-son bonding, Shin's phone rang, prompting him to quietly step out of the house. To his surprise, it was Steve Jobs on the line. In English, Steve Jobs asked, "Mr. Jobs? Why did you call me?" Honestly, despite Shin's admiration for Steve Jobs in his previous life, as they grew more familiar, Steve would occasionally call him for business matters or seek support in board meetings. Upon hearing Shin's voice on the phone, Steve Jobs simply remarked, "It seems Mr. Suzuki isn't as quickly informed about news, and here I thought you were aware of this." Furrowing his brows at this, Shin inquired, "Oh? What is it?" Steve Jobs' voice resonated through Shin's phone. "Microsoft has just released their own first-person shooting video game on their operating system." Upon hearing this, Shin wasn't too surprised and casually responded, "Oh? That?" His lack of surprise stemmed from an expectation he already had. Noticing Shin's nonchalant tone, Steve Jobs inquired, "Aren't you worried?" Shin chuckled in response and remarked, "There's no need to worry too much. Besides, it isn't on the same level as the video game Doom, right?" Steve Jobs smiled, affirming, "Right. Indeed, the video game released by Microsoft couldn't match the level of Doom. However, while it didn't reach the caliber of Kishin's Doom, for those who opted not to invest in an Apple computer but owned an HP with Microsoft OS, the game purchase contributed to a slight rise in Microsoft OS sales. The Microsoft first-person shooter, FPS, video game was named Apocalypse. It made a concerted effort to reach the same level as the video game Doom. However, due to its rushed development and lack of meticulous crafting like the video game Doom, some players reported encountering bugs or glitches. This resulted in a subpar experience for players who eagerly anticipated enjoying the video game. Chapter 207, Stan Lee. Shin journeyed to New York to visit Marvel Comics' current headquarters on Madison Avenue. Following a meeting with Oryo Masayoshi, Shin proceeded to the Marvel Comics headquarters. Upon entering the office, Shin received greetings from recently hired employees. He nodded in acknowledgement and noticed a middle-aged man, wearing glasses, observing him. In a hushed tone, Shin asked Oryo Masayoshi, where can I find Stan Lee? Initially perplexed, Oryo Masayoshi refrained from questioning Shin's inquiry. Instead, he gestured towards a middle-aged man in the distance. The office buzzed with employees diligently working, attempting to project an image of discipline. In the employees' minds, there was a perception that Japanese individuals valued hard work and discipline. The presence of Shinro Suzuki, the renowned founder of Kishin, heightened their excitement. After greeting Shinro Suzuki and Oryo Masayoshi, the employees seamlessly transitioned into diligent work mode, all the while discreetly observing Shinro Suzuki from the corners of their eyes. Meanwhile, Stan Lee emerged from his office, casting a curious gaze at Shinro Suzuki. Having heard of Shinro's substantial achievements in the burgeoning video game industry, where he crafted several widely popular games, Stan Lee was intrigued. Stan Lee delved into one of Kishin's video games, Super Mario, and found himself captivated by its allure. Curiosity piqued, he explored other Kishin video games, genuinely fascinated by the creativity they embodied. In this moment, Stan Lee couldn't help but admire Shinro Suzuki for his pivotal role in pioneering the video game industry. While pondering this, Stan Lee noticed Shinro Suzuki and the other Japanese man, Oryo Masayoshi, making their way toward him. Panicking slightly, Stan Lee worried that his extended observation of the young man without focusing on his work might have displeased Shinro Suzuki and Oryo Masayoshi. Hastening towards his office in an attempt to rectify the situation, he was halted by Oryo Masayoshi's firm command, "Wait." As Oryo Masayoshi stopped him, Stan Lee felt a sense of helplessness and let out a sigh, fearing that this might mark the culmination of his tenure at Marvel Comics. Stan Lee turned towards Shinro Suzuki and Oryo Masayoshi, and as the employees, who had been feigning diligence, discreetly observed the unfolding situation, mixed conclusions started to form in their minds. Some employees, who had survived Kishin's previous company-wide purge, and certain writers and artists at Marvel Comics, looked at Stan Lee with evident concern. In silent prayers, they hoped that the seasoned veteran wouldn't face dismissal like others who were let go for incompetence. Stan Lee, distinguished from those let go, elicited worried glances as Oryo Masayoshi stopped him. Simultaneously, some employees noted that Stan Lee didn't react swiftly to feign productivity. Instead, he stood there openly gazing at the bosses, raising additional concerns among his colleagues. Facing Shinro Suzuki and Oryo Masayoshi, Stan Lee offered a wry smile as he greeted, "Good afternoon." Upon hearing Stan Lee's greeting, Shin and Oryo Masayoshi exchanged glances with furrowed brows. Observing their reactions, Stan Lee sensed a mistake and recalled the Japanese tradition of bowing. Without hesitation, he swiftly corrected himself, bowing in a manner reminiscent of the Japanese custom he had seen in cinema and television. Witnessing their comrade and the venerable Stan Lee bowing, those who observed felt a palpable sense of pity in their hearts. In the midst of this, Shin perceived that Stan Lee might have misunderstood their approach. To allay any concerns, he flashed a reassuring smile and inquired, "Are you Mr. Stan Lee?" Upon hearing this, Stan Lee nodded. Despite feeling a tinge of nervousness about potential dismissal from Marvel Comics, he affirmed, "That I am." Shin responded with a warm smile, providing a sense of reassurance. He then extended his hands towards Stan Lee, signaling for a handshake, and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Lee." Stan Lee was pleasantly surprised when Shinro Suzuki extended a handshake, and the other employees discreetly observing were equally taken aback by this unexpected turn of events. "Yeah, nice to meet you too, Mr. Shinro Suzuki." Stan Lee responded, promptly clasping Shinro Suzuki's hands and shaking them respectfully. Oryo Masayoshi, too, was somewhat surprised as he observed Shin treating the middle-aged Stan Lee with unexpected warmth. Shin nodded, noticing the confused expression on Stan Lee's face, likely a reaction to the unexpected warmth. Excitedly, Shin expressed, "I have been a fan of your works, sir." Oryo Masayoshi, Stan Lee, and the employees, including writers and artists in their respective workspaces, were taken aback upon hearing Shinro Suzuki's statement. Shinro Suzuki, reading the works of the esteemed veteran? The employees, writers, and artists who had known Stan Lee for a long time collectively thought with astonishment. Simultaneously, the predominantly newly recruited employees, who had been anticipating Stan Lee's potential departure from Marvel Comics, found themselves even more surprised upon hearing Shinro Suzuki's words. Meanwhile, Stan Lee found himself astonished, thinking, "Shinro Suzuki liked my works." Filled with excitement, he exclaimed, "Really?" Shin nodded eagerly and replied, "Absolutely." I enjoyed your comic published in 1962, Amazing Fantasy. Peter Parker, the character you created, was truly remarkable. Stan Lee, exhilarated by the revelation that a prominent figure in the video game industry admired his work, exclaimed, "It's Spider-Man." Shin nodded in agreement, saying, "Yeah." Amidst the astonished expressions of Oreo Masayoshi and the employees, including writers and artists, who observed the discussion about comics, Shin eventually suggested, "We've been standing here for quite a while. Why don't we head to your office and continue our conversation?" Upon hearing this, Stan Lee promptly agreed, saying, of course, it was my pleasure." He then led Shinro Suzuki and Oreo Masayoshi to his office. As the Marvel Comics employees reacted with a mix of jealousy, happiness for Stan Lee, and indifference, the overall atmosphere was filled with diverse emotions. Meanwhile, upon entering Stan Lee's office, Shinro Suzuki, Oreo Masayoshi, and Stan Lee took their seats on the sofa. Positioned beside them, Oreo Masayoshi, Shin, and Stan Lee delved into discussions, primarily focusing on Marvel characters, particularly the creations of Stan Lee, slated for cinematic adaptation. Stan Lee, learning of Shinro Suzuki's plans to bring his works to the screen, couldn't contain his excitement. Chapter 208, Competition. In the Marvel Comics office, Shin and Stan Lee discussed film projects for Marvel characters. Shin shared, "I believe Spider-Man would make a great movie." Stan Lee agreed, "I think so too. He can connect with both young people and adults." Pausing, he added, "Though the film will be expensive, and if it fails." Shin reassured, "Don't worry, I'm confident it won't fail." Meanwhile, Oreo Masayoshi observed the discussion from the side. At Suzuki Financial Headquarters in Tokyo, Japan, in Ctto's CEO office, Ctto, Seiki and their uncle, Ctto Suzuki, the current vice chairman of Suzuki Group, gathered. "Looks like your little brother has some plans again," remarked Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki, observing the Suzuki brothers, Ctto and Seiki. Ctto stroked his chin, commenting, "Seems like it." Seiki added, "By buying Marvel Comics, there's no doubt he intends to bring Marvel characters to the cinema." Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki nodded, saying, "So far, I haven't seen your little brother fail terribly. He hasn't experienced defeat yet, which is why he's so confident in everything he does." Ctto, still stroking his chin, remarked, "It's nearly impossible for a person not to face failure at least once in life." Pausing with sharp eyes, he added, "I believe he should experience failure, he can't stay carefree forever." Seiki chuckled and said, "Let's see. I heard Marvel Comics was a failing company with declining sales, so Kishin likely acquired it at a low price." Ctto and Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki nodded. The Vice Chairman commented, "Even if it's acquired at a low price, it holds little significant value unless we confirm whether Kishin can truly profit from the company's comic stories." Then, Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki remarked, "Speaking of Kishin's acquisition of Marvel Comics, I've also been considering acquiring a comic company in the USA." Ctto and Seiki were a bit surprised, and Ctto inquired, "Oh, for the Suzuki Group?" Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki nodded, confirming, "Exactly." He paused, adding, "While I may not agree with your little fourth brother's methods, I acknowledge that he has some good ideas." Acquiring a comic company for his film studio. Ctto and Seiki nodded, and Seiki continued, "So you intend to acquire a comic company for Suzuki Picture Entertainment?" Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki affirmed, "Exactly. With the comic company, we can showcase the characters in cinemas." Pausing, he continued, "But what I intend to acquire is not a struggling and declining company like Marvel Comics, rather, I aim for Image Comics, which was recently founded in 1992. Ctto and Seiki nodded, and Ctto commented, "Image Comics? I've heard that company even surpassed Marvel Comics in sales, so I assume Image Comics boasts better comic stories compared to Marvel." Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki concurred with Ctto's observation. This time, Vice Chairman Ctto Suzuki saw an opportunity to enhance the reputation of the Suzuki Group subsidiary, Suzuki Picture Entertainment. He aimed to make a significant contribution to filmmaking, thereby adding to Suzuki Group's success and garnering more support than the Suzuki Group chairman, Shiro Suzuki. In early January 1994, Kishin once again released a variety of video games. As the number of video game players in Japan grew, estimated at about 15 to 20 million people, the tournament initiated by Kishin in 1992 also gained popularity. Kishin started a video game competition, surprising the business world as the competition led to an increase in their video game sales. Subsequently, Tora Suzuki also initiated their own video game competition for their players. Following Tora Suzuki's initiation of a video game competition, they observed a notable increase in their video game sales, particularly when a TV channel broadcasted the competition. People who were previously unaware of the allure of video games found themselves compelled to watch players compete on television. Gradually, individuals who hadn't had time for video games due to work or school commitments began to develop an interest. Consequently, they started purchasing video game consoles. Over time, Tora Suzuki's video game consoles and video games experienced a modest rise in sales. Tora Suzuki ceased the production of their own 16-bit consoles, opting instead to replace them with the Toaraki and Tsuki consoles. Due to their more affordable prices compared to SKES and Game Boy, individuals who had recently developed an interest in video games began purchasing the Toaraki, 16-bit console. To be honest, those new to video games had heard about them for quite a while but were not genuinely attracted, preferring to watch sports games rather than engage in pixelated cartoons. People who hadn't yet tried video games were confused about why several media outlets were giving so much attention to something they found uninteresting. Meanwhile, observing the sales rise after initiating a video game competition, Tora Suzuki announced regular competitions every 3 months. Not to be outdone, the employees and executives of Kishin, without Shin's instructions, also organized occasional video game competitions. These competitions offered cash rewards and other valuable items, such as rare or uncommon Pokémon cards, for those at the bottom of the rankings. Meanwhile, Idori Tanaka, the influential figure in the Tora Suzuki Alliance's video games sector and the eldest son of Asahi Tanaka, was not to be outdone. He had initially suggested the video game competition tournament to the Tora Suzuki Alliance. Observing Kishin using items to reward and entice players, he proposed incorporating Tora Suzuki Mech's action figures and cards as additional incentives. This time, Idori Tanaka aimed to compete with Shinro Suzuki in the video game industry. However, Idori was unaware that Shin wasn't overly concerned about the competition with Tora Suzuki and didn't pay much attention to the video game competition tournament for players. Shin already had broader plans for the future of the video game competition tournament, but the time for unveiling those plans had not yet arrived. During this period, Shin focused on developing the game engine for both video game consoles and computers. Recognizing the gaming potential of computers and mobile devices, Shin invested in Apple. Aware of Apple's commitment to advancing technology, especially in phones, Shin engaged in discussions with Steve Jobs. Shin suggested exploring IBM's Angler, a concept that Steve Jobs was already familiar with and found quite fascinating due to its advanced features ahead of its time. Chapter 209, NVIDIA and Consoles Development. While Kishin conducted research on CPU and GPU in collaboration with Apple and Rebold Technology, Shin perceived the progress in research to be somewhat sluggish. Fortunately, Shin had made investments and engaged in joint research with NVIDIA. As Shin stroked his chin in contemplation, he recollected NVIDIA and smiled. Upon reflection, NVIDIA has been established for several months now, and the company harbors significant potential in graphic-based processing technology. They should be progressing effectively, possibly making another valuable contribution to Kishin's development in GPU technologies. Shin couldn't help but think of NVIDIA. Out of curiosity, he searched for information about NVIDIA in 1993. In this parallel world, Shin wasn't certain whether the company truly existed, but with the assistance of Oryo Masayoshi and some Japanese executives sent by Shin who had gradually adapted to life in the United States, they successfully located the graphics company NVIDIA. Founded by a man from Taiwan and 2 other co-founders with backgrounds in the computer industry, they had started a company focused on advanced computer power. Upon confirming that NVIDIA indeed existed in this world, Shin instructed his team to contact them promptly. Shin recalled that it was around April, and NVIDIA was actively accepting capitalist funding, having already raised approximately $8 million in funds. Upon learning that Sequoia Capital and the Walden Group had already provided funding to NVIDIA, Shin felt a sense of urgency. Consequently, he promptly reached out to the 3 co-founders of NVIDIA and invested $20 million without hesitation. Although Oryo Masayoshi and the others were initially confused, they followed Shin's instructions without hesitation. Following this, NVIDIA successfully secured 2 rounds of capitalist funding, an initial $8 million and a subsequent $20 million from Kishin. The 3 co-founders of NVIDIA, having raised a total of $28 million for their company funds, were exhilarated. Simultaneously, NVIDIA began expanding its team by hiring more engineers for product development. During this period, the co-founders of NVIDIA were even more surprised to discover that Kishin would assist them in GPU research. They were astonished to learn that Kishin possessed expertise not only in graphics-based processing technologies but also in CPU technologies. However, for Kishin to provide assistance in both research and funding, one of the founders, Jason Huang, agreed that Kishin would have the rights to use the technologies jointly developed by NVIDIA and Kishin. Additionally, Kishin would acquire a 21% stake in the NVIDIA company. The co-founder and CEO, Jason Huang, along with the other two co-founders, engaged in discussions about this matter. Since they would retain control over the NVIDIA company and each held more individual shares than Kishin, they found agreement with Kishin's terms. Their concurrence stemmed from the realization that with Kishin's support, they could make significant technological advancements and enhance their financial capabilities, thanks to Kishin's backing of NVIDIA funds. As a result, NVIDIA proceeded with its research on graphic-based processors. Owing to the experience and knowledge of the three co-founders of NVIDIA, the research progressed quite well, and with Kishin's assistance, it received a substantial boost. The three co-founders of NVIDIA were somewhat grateful to Kishin for the support in their research. However, unbeknownst to them, the one gradually reaping benefits from the joint research was actually Kishin. As Shin was currently in the USA, he visited NVIDIA in Sunnyvale, California. Upon Shin's arrival, he was warmly welcomed by NVIDIA's CEO, Jason Huang. As they shook hands and exchanged greetings, Jason Huang admitted that upon receiving news of the renowned Shinro Suzuki visiting his company, he couldn't help but be curious about the man who was gradually gaining recognition worldwide. While Shinro Suzuki's fame might not rival that of Hollywood stars, he was well known in the business world, particularly in the video games sector. During their conversation, Jason Huang found himself quite intrigued by the founder and chairman of Kishin Rules, expressing curiosity about the development of their joint research. Jason Huang smiled confidently as his secretary served Shinro Suzuki a coffee in his office. He stated, "The ongoing research, nearing a year in duration, has already borne fruit. We've developed a PCI card, NV1, currently under testing. Its triangles per second surpass most in the market, supporting up to 2 MB. It can render complex 3D or 2D graphics and also features support for quadratic texture mapping." As Shin listened to Jason Huang's words, he was pleasantly surprised at the rapid progress in GPU research. Simultaneously, Shin smiled, realizing that soon, gaming on PCs would become a reality. Moreover, with the advancement of GPUs for computers, progress in video game consoles and handheld devices was also well underway. The development of Kishin's video game consoles was progressing impressively, but Shin recognized that the impact of the 32-bit architecture wouldn't be as significant in the video game industry. Although relevant, it paled in comparison to the forthcoming 64-bit consoles. To address this, Shin planned to initially release the KS1, a video game console similar to the PS1 from Shin's previous life. It featured a 32-bit architecture with a 64-bit data bus. In essence, the KS1 served as a prototype for what Kishin was truly focused on, developing the authentic 64-bit console. However, Shin was aware that it would take at least 2 or more years to complete the research on the true 64-bit console, expected around 1996 or 1997. Shin was aware that, regardless of his confidence, Kishin wasn't the sole entity developing its technologies. The Toru Suzuki Alliance was making strides in their own console development. Their aspirations extended beyond the 32-bit realm, aiming for a 64-bit console with enhanced data and memory capabilities, along with a superior processor. Toru Suzuki sought the freedom to develop a wide array of video games, potentially surpassing Kishin in originality and graphic superiority, even if their gameplay wasn't as complex as Kishin's. They had previously surpassed Kishin in graphics, but now they were striving to outdo Kishin in terms of electronics and technological quality. Unbeknownst to them, Kishin was also in the process of developing its own prototype video game console. The year 1994 was destined to witness an intensification of competition in the video game industry, starting in Japan. Chapter 210, Celebration and Internet. As February approached in 1994, Kishin announced the release of the Game Boy Pocket. A lighter version of the Game Boy, it was significantly more affordable than the original Game Boy. First advertised on a Japanese TV channel, the commercial featured an elementary boy effortlessly pocketing the Game Boy and discreetly playing it while the teacher wasn't looking. The commercial was humorous, though it did annoy some people. However, it didn't deter those in Japan who desired to play on the Game Boy but found it too expensive. With the introduction of the Game Boy Pocket, a lighter and more affordable version, it appealed to the preferences of many Japanese. On February 13, 1994, the Game Boy Pocket was released and quickly purchased by numerous Japanese. Coincidentally, it was also Shin and Myra's son, Shinichi's birthday. Shin and Myra's parents visited their new house in Minato Ward. Upon entering, Shiro and Eri, accompanied by their sons and daughters, marveled at the spaciousness of the mansion, leaving Eri impressed. The mansion exuded a modern touch, and upon entering, the house's exquisite design even left Shiro impressed. As Shiko and Seiki strolled through the backyard garden, they spotted Shin and Myra with their son. The area was already bustling with guests, including executives from Kishin companies and Shin's friend, Hideki Kiyoshi. Meanwhile, Rookie promptly approached Shin and Myra, finding amusement in observing her nephew. Rookie enjoyed playing with her nephew Shinichi, who responded with adorable laughter. Meanwhile, Reina seemed amused by her nephew too. Honestly, she still harbored disappointment that her boyfriend, Kenshin, had given up on their relationship. Consequently, she now had fewer servants at the university. Adding to this, she was nearing the completion of her university studies. While she had gradually become more mature, her spending habits remained unchanged, as if there were no limits. Simultaneously, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy towards Myra for having a dependable man like her brother. Especially knowing that Shinro was so affluent that he could likely afford a private plane by now. After some time, Shiryu also made an entrance with his girlfriend, eliciting surprise from his parents and siblings. "You have a girlfriend now? When's the wedding?" Shin teased Shiryu, who had brought along a beautiful and fit woman. Shiryu chuckled wryly, replying, "So fast." He paused to introduce his slightly tall and beautiful girlfriend, saying, "This is Ran Asakawa. She works as a model." Ran Asakawa bowed to Shin and the others, presenting herself and mentioning her occupation as a model in a certain company. Upon hearing her name, Shin faintly sensed familiarity but dismissed it, assuming he must be mistaken. Sazuma and Kumiko arrived shortly after Shiko. Upon seeing their great-grandson for the first time, emotions surged in their hearts. The youngest grandson, Shinichi, had completely captivated their hearts. As the uncles, aunties, and their respective sons and daughters from Shin's side arrived and witnessed the close bond between Sazuma and Shinichi, a sudden alertness and alarm set in among them. Observing this, Ctto, the vice-chairman of the Suzuki Group, immediately whispered to his son, "Shoaki, when will you give your grandfather a great-grandson? They're growing old every day, and they need to see what you're capable of." His wife concurred, casting a meaningful look at Shoaki. Upon hearing this, Shoaki felt helpless and responded, "Didn't you say I should focus on studying before pursuing romance?" In response, Ctto brought Shoaki closer, whispering, "The plan has changed. Look at how close your grandfather and grandmother are to that youngster, Shinro's son." He pointed at Sazuma and Kumiko, who were playing with Shinichi. Shoaki observed that his grandfather and grandmother were indeed amused by Shinro's son. Then he overheard his father, Ctto, saying, "It wouldn't be a surprise if that great-grandson of theirs, the son of Shinro and also the grandson of Shiro, ends up inheriting a portion of your grandfather and grandmother's shares." Shoaki found the statement logical. Simultaneously, he recalled that his grandmother, Kumiko, also owned shares in the Suzuki Group. Upon hearing more of his father's reasons, Shoaki felt the urgency to have a son immediately. He also heard his mother whispering, "It doesn't matter if it's a boy or girl. Just make sure the baby is cuter than Shinichi." Shoaki suddenly felt a palpable pressure upon hearing that. Shortly after, Myra's parents, Miku and Daichi, along with Minji, arrived at the party. Photographers arrived to capture pictures of Shin, Myra, and their family. This time, despite the competition between Shin and his other two siblings, they came together for a photograph. Shiko and Seiki were accommodating enough to smile alongside Shin for the photo. Meanwhile, Shin's cousins also took a photo with Shin, Myra, and their son. Although Myra felt uncomfortable in the presence of Shin's family, she persevered. Soon, their baby Shinichi's cake arrived. The cake was an impressive creation featuring characters from Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and various Kishin video games. The most popular among the children brought by the executives and employees of Kishin was Pokémon. When Shiko and Seiki saw the 12 large cakes, each adorned with a candle representing a month and featuring Kishin's popular video game IPs, they couldn't help but feel a bit bitter. After all, these very popular video games from Kishin were posing challenges for the Suzuki Group in the video game sector. Meanwhile, as the celebration for Kishin's founder's son unfolded, Yahoo was added to the homepage in the World Wide Web directory. The internet industry would become so widespread and global that it would surpass the video game industry, which was only gradually gaining worldwide recognition, especially when compared to the swift success of the internet, still not as popular as it is today. Simultaneously, Kishin's investment in the World Wide Web would now begin to show its effects after the few years that Shin has invested in the company. While it might still take a year or two before the internet becomes relatively well known, it's not an exaggeration to anticipate that the profits Shin will gain after the internet's popularity surges will be immense. Chapter 211, Before KS1. Ken Kaizawa has been a programmer at Kishin for a considerable time. Currently, he is among the programmers selected to work on a computer program for video game development. This project, named Unreal Engine, was initiated by Shinro Suzuki. The focus of the project is on developing video games for the upcoming 32-bit console with a 64-bit data bus, or potentially for a true 64-bit console in the future. Presently, Kishin has successfully completed the 32-bit video game console with a 64-bit data bus, known as the Kishin PlayStation 1 or KS1. Due to Kishin's branding being less prominent and established compared to other renowned Japanese brands like Toyota, Tora, Suzuki, or Mitsubishi outside the video game sector, the company had to associate the brand name Kishin with their new video game console. While Tora and Suzuki may face challenges from Kishin in the video game sector, they still command greater global brand presence and prestige. Despite their struggles in the video game sector, Tora holds a significant 25% stake, and Suzuki maintains a 28% share in the video game industry, leaving Kishin with the remaining 47%. While this percentage might seem modest, Suzuki's 28% translates to nearly 70 million, considering an estimated 250 million casual video game players worldwide. Kishin dominates the video game industry, with approximately 10% of players exclusively engaging in KES and the remaining 37% in SKES video games. This is particularly evident in countries like Japan, the USA, and some European nations. However, the dynamics shift in countries where Tora or Suzuki products are preferred due to competitive pricing, coupled with the strong brand presence these companies had even before entering the video game industry. Therefore, the higher UPS at Kishin decided to enhance the brand presence, suggesting to Shinro Suzuki, who initially wanted to name the new video game console PlayStation, to go with Kishin PlayStation. Especially with the KS1, it might not be immediately recognized in other stores or malls as a Kishin product due to its new design. As Ken Kaizawa entered the workspace, he found a wide and tidy area with ample space. A table near the transparent glass of the building offered a view showcasing the city's charm. This serves as the workspace for those involved in the Unreal Engine project. After Kishin transformed the main company into Kishin Rules and relocated the headquarters to Minato Ward in Tokyo, the building they now occupy is more grand and exquisite compared to the one in Toshima Ward. Ken Kaizawa approached his workmate, who was sipping coffee at the wide round table. Greeting him, Ken said, "Good morning, Kaido-kun." Muta Kaido nodded in response and replied, "You too, Kaizawa-kun." Sitting beside him, Ken glanced at the paper Muta was engrossed in. "You're always so invested in the development of this Unreal Engine program," he remarked, observing the page filled with research on the program. "Of course," Muta Kaido affirmed, nodding. "This is such a fascinating program we are developing." Ken chuckled and added, "The concept and idea came from Shinro Suzuki himself, after all." Muta Kaido nodded and replied, "You bet." He paused before adding, "I am putting in the effort because we're not the sole developers of this program. I've heard that even Americans in Silicon Valley are working on it, so we can't afford to slack and lose to foreigners." Ken Kaizawa nodded, observing his colleagues entering the workspace, immediately diving into work after grabbing coffee from the machine. Even though the Americans in Silicon Valley were also working for Kishin, as a programmer based in Japan, there was a sense of competition to see who could make the most significant contribution to the program. Especially considering that Kishin plans to increase the salary of programmers who make significant contributions to the program's features and functions. While Kishin doesn't operate like a black company enforcing overwork, some programmers at Kishin put in extra effort in developing and contributing to the program. This is not only because it interests them, but there's also a salary raise in doing so. It creates a win-win situation for them. Ken Kaizawa and Muta Kaido discussed for quite a while before heading to their desks with Apple computers to start programming. Kishin had already completed programming the desired game engine for use with the 32-bit or KS1 alone. The Unreal Engine represented a continuation of this game engine's development. Ken Kaizawa observed that the progress of the Unreal Engine was significant, but it proved to be a demanding program even for the latest computers in 1994. While he admired Shinro Suzuki's innovative thinking and out-of-this-world ideas, Ken Kaizawa found it perplexing that the soon-to-be-released KS1 would only support CD-ROM instead of a video game cartridge. As Ken Kaizawa is aware, the majority of CD-ROM patents are owned by Suzuki, with the minority belonging to Philips. This concern troubles other executives and employees who are aware of the impending release of KS1. Kishin lacks significant influence in CD-ROM technologies, given that many patents in this domain are owned by Suzuki, a competitor in the video game industry. I hope everything goes well, Ken Kaizawa thought. He doesn't want Kishin to face an unfavorable situation, especially since it's the only company he has worked for that provides a more relaxed and fair workplace, unlike other Japanese corporations that violate employee rights through excessive overtime. However, what he and others didn't know was that Kishin also owned a few CD-ROM technology patents that hadn't yet been patented by either Suzuki or Philips. Shin had already broached the topic of CD-ROM cross-licensing patents with his father, Chairman Shiro Suzuki, during Shinichi's birthday. Initially expecting a business discussion, Shiro was taken aback to find that his son was proposing a cross-license agreement for CD-ROM patents with Suzuki. Shiro Suzuki wasn't overly surprised to learn that Kishin possessed a few patents related to CD-ROM technologies, given that Suzuki held the majority of such patents. Along with the higher UPS in the Suzuki Group, he had heard of Kishin's ownership of CD-ROM technology patents. Initially uncertain about Kishin's plans, the Suzuki Group speculated that it might be related to a video game console. Now, with Shin initiating a discussion about cross-licensing CD-ROM patents, Shiro felt more confident that Kishin must have already developed something significant. In a cross-license agreement, Kishin and Suzuki could utilize each other's patents under mutually agreed terms. Shiro recognized the value of Kishin's CD-ROM technology patents, even if they were just a few patents compared to Suzuki's extensive portfolio. However, Shiro alone wouldn't be the sole decision-maker. He brought up the proposal for a CD-ROM cross-license between Kishin and Suzuki to the board of directors. Chapter 212, Cross-License Agreement. The Suzuki Group Board of Directors meeting was a bit astonished when they heard the chairman presenting the proposal for Kishin's cross-license of CD-ROM. Some board members disagreed, some agreed, and others remained neutral. However, Vice Chairman Ctto was evidently disapproving. He stated, "I don't think there's a need to consider this. Kishin is our competitor, and this cross-license will only benefit Kishin instead of us." Some board members initially agreed, but most of them shifted their stance after hearing Chairman Shiro's subsequent remarks. "I believe there's no harm in the proposal, considering the technological aspects, such as the method and apparatus for recording information on an optimal disk, among others. Some of Kishin's CD-ROM patents could prove valuable for our products, including the upcoming DVD jointly developed by Philips, Panasonic, Toshiba, and especially us, Suzuki," Chairman Shiro stated with a serious expression. Vice Chairman Ctto and other dissenting board members were left speechless by Chairman Shiro's explanation. When Vice Chairman Ctto attempted to counter Chairman Shiro, the latter just stared at him and remarked, "Even if you don't agree, there's not much choice. If we reject the proposal, we'll end up paying royalties to Kishin for CD-ROM technologies inevitably used in DVD technologies, as they hold patents in this area." Upon hearing this, some board members experienced mixed feelings. Some frowned, others furrowed their brows, while some remained indifferent. Chairman Shiro's statements seemed to make sense. It appeared that the Suzuki Group would only benefit from agreeing to Kishin's cross-license, especially considering that the DVD product promised greater value and profitability compared to video game consoles, as perceived by investors and board members. As Vice Chairman Ctto persisted in his belief against agreement, he was silenced by Chairman Shiro's assertion, "Vice Chairman, you should prioritize the well-being of the Suzuki Group and understand what is best for our corporation." Vice Chairman Ctto, noticing limited support in the board of directors, could only grit his teeth as they unanimously agreed to the cross-license of Kishin and Suzuki CD-ROM patents. In Tokyo's Minato Ward, Kishin's new building was significantly more spacious, complete with an adjacent parking lot. The interior housed a comfortable workspace for employees, along with amenities such as a restaurant and cafe similar to the building Kishin had in the Toshima Ward. The workspace at Kishin offers employees and workers a sense of freedom in a relaxed atmosphere, in stark contrast to many other corporations in Japan that currently impose pressure and overtime on their workforce. When employees or workers proudly talk about Kishin's workspace to their friends, they are often met with disbelieving looks. Having such a company in Japan seemed almost impossible. However, this uniqueness sparked curiosity among friends of Kishin employees or workers, leading to a growing influx of people visiting Kishin headquarters to apply day by day. Some of them were programmers from other corporations, and upon proving their skills, they were hired by Kishin. As days passed, Kishin's workforce experienced steady growth. The strategic decision to have Kishin HQ located in the prosperous Minato ward of Tokyo began to show its advantages. The talents joining Kishin contributed to the company's advancement and efficiency across various departments. Meanwhile, in Shin's new spacious, exquisite, yet neatly arranged office, adorned with Kishin video games and anime character figurines on shelves along with some books, Shin sat comfortably in an office chair. He had just received a report confirming Suzuki's agreement with the terms of the Kishin CD-ROM cross-license. Shin smiled, confident that the Suzuki group wouldn't resist and would agree, considering that most of the CD-ROM technologies patented by Kishin were crucial for the DVD development involving Suzuki and 3 other companies. Despite lacking a choice in the CD-ROM technologies, as Suzuki Group held the majority of patents in the 1980s, Shin had to cross-license with Suzuki. This allowed Kishin to utilize Suzuki's CD-ROM technologies in their latest KS1 video game console. After a while, Shin proceeded to the conference room. The new room was significantly more spacious, featuring a round table. The executives were already seated around it. Shin walked in and took the central seat, prompting the executives to respectfully and formally adjust their positions. Unlike before, the release of the KS1 was not as confidential this time. With just a few weeks remaining until the launch, excitement surged through the executives. The anticipation of announcing Kishin's latest products fueled their enthusiasm, foreseeing profitable returns for the company. Shin smiled at the executives' excitement and expressed, "Firstly, I want to thank each one of you for the hard work you've contributed to the company. Without all of you, Kishin would probably be facing even tougher challenges than it already is." The Kishin executives felt flattered by Shinro Suzuki's words, and one of them responded, "Hehe, we should be grateful to the chairman for giving us this opportunity. It's the other way around, chairman. Without you, we'd probably be struggling. A person of chairman's stature shouldn't praise us too much, or we might get too comfortable and grow complacent." Shin smiled as he observed some executives attempting to reciprocate the flattery. Following the discussions, Shin stated, "With the impending release of the KS1, the prices for our SKES and their video games are expected to be further reduced. Therefore, starting today, we will lower the prices of the 2 consoles to boost sales before the KS1 launch." The executives unanimously agreed with Shin. Meanwhile, at Tora Electronics, President Taro Ikeda, accompanied by Idori Tanaka and the executives, became aware of the Suzuki Group's agreement with Kishin regarding the cross-license of CD-ROM patents. Given that Tora Suzuki was developing their video game console in CD format, they had already anticipated Kishin's next moves, a CD format video game console. The timing of Kishin's announcement for the release of their new video game console was still unknown. Initially, they assumed Kishin would take its time in the development process. However, they received intel indicating that Kishin actually planned to release their new video game console soon. Chapter 213, Anticipation. In mid-March, people were surprised to discover that Kishin significantly lowered the price of the KES and SKES video game console, making it even more affordable than to RAK. This sparked discussions in Japan. Whoa, what's going on? What is Kishin thinking? They actually slashed the prices of KES and SKES this much. They also slightly dropped the prices of the video games too. I wonder what Kishin is up to. Many were left pondering the unexpected discounted prices of Kishin's video game consoles. Whether it was a temporary discount or a permanent reduction remained unverified by Kishin, as they maintained silence regarding the price drop. Simultaneously, with the reduction in prices for KES and SKES, the Japanese began to purchase these consoles in a small frenzy, leading to a surge in sales for Kishin video game consoles and video games. Meanwhile, the Tora Suzuki Alliance, privy to intel about Kishin's plans to release their CD format video game console, found themselves in a somber state, particularly for those working in the electronics sector responsible for developing Tora Suzuki's video game consoles. Despite the aspirations of Idori Tanaka and others leading the Tora Suzuki alliance to surpass Kishin in the video game sector, Kishin managed to get ahead of them. To be honest, Tora Corporation chairman, Asahi Tanaka, had already shifted his focus away from video games, as their business extended beyond this sector. The same applied to the Suzuki Group. Their primary focus wasn't solely on video games, yet they still maintained an interest in video game development. Despite the modest profits derived from the video game business, both companies recognized that any profit was worthwhile. Consequently, Chairman Asahi Tanaka of Tora Corporation allocated additional workforce to the video games sector. Meanwhile, at TV Asahi, an advertisement captured the attention of casual video game fans: Kishin's animations featuring video game characters and CGI Jurassic Park dinosaurs. A deep-voiced Japanese narrator proclaimed, Kishin's latest will unveil a new chapter for the video game industry in 1994. As the Kishin logo, accompanied by animations of CGI dinosaurs and beloved characters like Super Mario, Link, Zelda, Yoshi, Sonic, Pikachu, and Ash, played out. "Hello, it's me, Mario." Mario leaped in his iconic style, introducing himself. Other Kishin video game characters also took turns introducing themselves before the Japanese narrator declared, Kishin will herald the beginning of the revolutionary era in video games in 1994. Casual players, along with dedicated fans, found themselves excitedly watching the advertisement. The Japanese narrator continued, Kishin founder, Shinro Suzuki, will make this announcement on April 1, 1994. Stay tuned to the TV Asahi channel at 12 o'clock p.m. On the animated screen, text appeared, proclaiming, Kishin announcement in 1994. April 1, 1994. Video game enthusiasts, whether loyal to Kishin, Tora, or Suzuki, erupted into discussions as they absorbed the Kishin advertisement about an upcoming announcement. "Oh! Is Kishin planning to release another revolutionary video game?" a guy exclaimed in the plaza, looking at his friends with anticipation. "Idiot! There's no need for such an elaborate advertisement with costly CGI and anime animations if it's just a video game announcement." His friend rebuked him. "That's true. For a simple video game announcement, they could just release the date casually without all the fuss," another agreed with a nod. "Exactly. There's no need for Kishin founder, Shinro Suzuki, to personally announce it if it's just a video game," a young man concurred with excitement in his eyes. "The announcement being on April 1, 1994, doesn't it feel a bit suspicious?" a guy interjected. Upon hearing this, a sense of suspicion swept through the group regarding Kishin's choice of April 1, 1994, for the announcement. Are they trying to make it a joke, the so-called April Fools? It can't be, right? Another said, his tone tinged with doubt. If Kishin pulls that off, I'll never buy a single product from them again. Yet, I'll curse Shinro Suzuki, even if he is the reason for the revival of the video game industry. Other video game fans were engaged in similar discussions, simultaneously harboring doubts about Kishin's intentions. Why announce it on April 1? Is Kishin really playing an April Fool's prank? Despite the anticipation, there was a collective lowering of expectations, with some fearing that Kishin might indeed be fooling them just for the sake of amusement. Nevertheless, amidst the skepticism, some video game fans speculated, could Kishin actually be releasing a new video game console? I think so too. The fact that the advertisement mentioned the revolutionary era of video games, coupled with the price reductions on their KES and SKES, seems to suggest that possibility. Indeed. I hope that's the case, unlike the speculation about it being Kishin's April Fool's joke. Yet, many video game fans preferred the idea of Kishin releasing a new video game console rather than it turning out to be a prank, as everyone believed it would harm Kishin's reputation if they played with the fans' expectations. Meanwhile, the Suzuki brothers, who had also come to watch the advertisement, chuckled. Shiko shook his head, saying, it was really the fourth brother. Making such a big deal out of their new console. Seiki smiled and remarked, I think I'd do the same if I were him. Although he said this in a light tone, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy toward Shinro in his heart. Actually, creating animations of their IP's video game characters with CGI dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. That short ad alone must have cost a lot. Seiki continued to smile, his hands in his pockets, and said, it was his money. His rules. Shiko remained silent after that. Meanwhile, at Tora Electronics headquarters, Idori Tanaka's expressions were indifferent as he stroked his chin. He muttered, "Such a high-profile marketing. Kishin is certainly confident in everything, or rather, Shinro Suzuki is certainly confident in everything." He mentioned this because Kishin didn't limit its advertising to just TV Asahi, it spread across various TV channels, capturing the attention of many who learned about Kishin's upcoming announcement on April 1, 1994. Suddenly, April 1, 1994, became the eagerly awaited date in Japan. The catch, however, was that April 1 coincided with Shigetsu Ibaka, or April Fool's Day. Consequently, several media outlets in Japan began speculating that Kishin was planning to execute the biggest prank in the history of Japan. Is Kishin planning the biggest April Fool's Day prank not only in Japan but also in the whole world? Questioned the NHK News anchor. Deceiving an entire country and building anticipation among your fans, only to leave them disappointed in the end, is this Kishin's cruel plan? Remarked a TBS News source. Kishin's April Fool's plan began to gain international attention, catching the eye of foreign media outlets. People from various countries started learning about Kishin's impending announcement through the news. Given the different timelines and dates in each country, and some even having their own calendars, the notion of Kishin potentially planning to prank a country on April 1 brought laughter from foreigners. Simultaneously, on CNN, a reporter asked a professional, would Kishin and Shinro Suzuki be willing to jeopardize the reputation they've built over the years just for an April Fool's Day? The professional shook his head and responded, "I don't think so. Considering the fact that Shinro Suzuki is said to be announcing something remarkable on April 1, 1994, there's no doubt about that." He paused and added, "This may be a marketing strategy from Kishin." The CNN reporter was somewhat surprised and nodded, saying, "Oh, now it makes sense." While it made sense to some, others remained doubtful and unsure. Whether it was truly an April Fool's prank by Kishin or a genius marketing strategy would be revealed on April 1, 1994, in Japan. Chapter 214, Intro. The Japanese eagerly anticipated the Kishin reveal on April 1. Consequently, TV Asahi experienced a slight uptick in ratings, and as April approached, its viewership gradually increased by a few percentage points. Various TV channels affected by a reduction in ratings in Japan anticipated a rise in TV Asahi's ratings. Kishin, a company known for its high profile, particularly with founder Shinro Suzuki, who rarely appeared on television, fueled this anticipation. At present, everyone is eager to discover what Kishin plans to announce on April 1. Foreign journalists stayed in Japan to witness the announcement and interview Japanese people afterward. Meanwhile, Kishin haters began expressing their opinions. "I bet Kishin's plan is just an April Fool's Day joke. They probably didn't expect many to take their advertisement seriously, and if they still pull off an April Fool's joke, they might end up bankrupt," chuckled a high schooler to his classmates. "Haha, I bet Kishin will apologize before the announcement even begins. They'll surely disappoint many fans," declared a Kishin hater, while the rest of the classmates fell silent, exchanging glances and quietly discussing among themselves. Observing this, the Kishin haters were taken aback as everyone seemed to ignore their comments. The 20-year-old high schooler who harbored disdain for Kishin sighed in annoyance, joined by his longtime friends who had been in high school for years without advancing. Their animosity toward Kishin stemmed from their crush, the popular girl in the class, having feelings for Shinro Suzuki, the founder of Kishin. Their dislike extended not only to Kishin but also to Shinro Suzuki. While some haters speculated, non-haters found themselves thinking along similar lines. Opinions were mixed, but the truth would only unfold on April 1. Everyone awaited the day when everything would become clear. Finally, April 1 arrived, capturing the attention of Japan. Even ordinary salarymen, who typically cared little for video games aside from sports and beers, couldn't help but notice. Colleagues turned on the TV, momentarily pausing their busy work. As it was Friday, students entering the school wouldn't have the chance to witness what Kishin was going to announce. However, in some schools, there were televisions in auditoriums, and a few students managed to sneak out to turn on those fixed to the walls. "This is the moment of truth," exclaimed one young student, eyeing the television tuned to the TV Asahi channel. "This is where we'll find out if Kishin is really fooling us." The guys discussed among themselves, while the girls engaged in different conversations. "Oh, this is exciting. Our beloved Shinro-sama will appear!" exclaimed a cute young girl. I don't care if Kishin releases something good or if it's just an April Fool's joke. I just want to see his handsome face once more," declared a stern yet beautiful young girl. The nearby guys overhearing this felt their hearts fill with jealousy toward Shinro Suzuki. A few minutes later, finally, it was 12 o'clock. As the clock struck that hour, the screen on TV Asahi changed. Viewers, whether at home, work, or in schools, witnessed their television screens transforming into vibrant green forests. Dinosaurs strolled across the scene, with American actors and actresses pointing at them in excitement. Confusion and curiosity filled the viewers as they observed the unfolding scene resembling Jurassic Park. What intrigued them further was that this particular scene had never been seen in Jurassic Park before. Suddenly, the scenes shifted as the dinosaurs attacked, and Americans ran in fear. The camera then focused on a Jurassic Park jeep navigating in the distance. Viewers, anticipating a Kishin announcement, found themselves perplexed by this unexpected Jurassic Park theme. They were expecting Kishin's announcement, not this. On the jeep, the camera zoomed in, revealing Shinro Suzuki as the driver, accompanied by 2D animated characters such as Mario, Sonic, Link, Yoshi, and even Pac-Man at the back of the jeep, carried by Samus Aran in the armor of Super Metroid. Celeste was also by the side of Shinro Suzuki as he steered the vehicle. The guys experienced mixed feelings of excitement and curiosity as they witnessed Shinro Suzuki alongside popular Kishin video game characters. Meanwhile, female fans with a crush on Shinro Suzuki expressed obvious excitement. "Kia! Shinro Suzuki-sama! Oh, you can do everything to me!" whispered some delusional female fans to themselves as they gazed at Shinro Suzuki on the screen. Then, the scene shifted to dinosaurs noticing Shinro Suzuki's jeep, approaching it immediately as intense and thrilling sounds resonated. Some kids or fans felt surreal and shouted, "Get away immediately!" Meanwhile, others couldn't help but express their confusion. "I thought it was an announcement? Why did it turn into a film?" On the screen, the jeep with Shinro Suzuki driving was blocked and surrounded by growling and roaring dinosaurs. Viewers at home felt thoroughly thrilled by the scene, even though they were aware it was merely CGI. Shinro Suzuki brought the vehicle to a halt, and viewers watched as he stepped out of the car, accompanied by 2D animated characters representing Kishin IPs. Baryonyx, Compsognathus, Giganotosaurus, blah blah blah, and finally Tyrannosaurus Rex. Shinro Suzuki, on the screen, whispered to himself. Turning to Link, he instructed, "Attack them." Link nodded, unsheathed his sword, and swiftly approached the dinosaurs, executing flashes of sword strikes. The injured dinosaur grew enraged, advancing menacingly toward Link. As Link battled, a swarm of dinosaurs converged on Shinro Suzuki and the others. Mario couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh, oh!" in response to the unfolding scene. Meanwhile, Sonic remarked, "This doesn't look very good for you all, mister," as he directed his gaze toward Shinro Suzuki. Shinro Suzuki responded with a smile, "You can run." Sonic chuckled, countering, "Abandoning my friends? Not in my dictionary." As viewers observed the imminent attack on Shinro Suzuki and the renowned Kishin IPs characters, Shinro Suzuki on the screen shouted to Mario, "Mario, get the secret weapon." Mario, somewhat surprised by Shinro Suzuki's request, swiftly ran and retrieved something from the back of the jeep, responding to Shinro Suzuki's urgent look. Mario returned with a box, sparking curiosity among the viewers regarding the contents that were supposed to be a secret weapon. "Is it a gun?" some viewers wondered in curiosity. Then, they witnessed Shinro Suzuki smiling as he opened the box. The dinosaurs also appeared curious, stopping and gazing at Shinro Suzuki holding the box. With a smile, Shinro Suzuki exclaimed, "Behold! The change has come." He took the white console and raised it towards the sky with both hands. Viewers, initially confused about how a square, white object could be a weapon, gradually realized something. "I knew it! It's a new video game console. Oh! The latest Kishin console." Excitement filled many viewers as the television screen zoomed in on the console that Shinro Suzuki was holding. The design looked fresh, with the white color and the KS1 logo prominently displayed on the front. This revelation thrilled the fans incredibly. As their excitement reached its peak, on the scene, the dinosaurs that had momentarily stopped began to swarm once more. However, this time, Shinro Suzuki simply smiled as he extracted something from the box. It turned out to be a CD with an image of cars on the front. As viewers watched, they observed Shinro Suzuki pressing the center circle on the white console. The circular lid popped open, surprising the viewers as they discovered it was actually a CD-ROM drive. They then saw Shinro Suzuki insert the CD into the console before closing the CD-ROM slot lid. Then, as viewers remained puzzled, cars of various styles emerged. One of the car windows slid down, revealing Ash and Pikachu inside. Shinro Suzuki smiled, swiftly opening the sports car-style vehicle and hopping in. Similarly, the 2D animated Kishin video game IPS entered various cars, and together with Shinro Suzuki, they drove the cars. Pikachu and other Pokémon in separate vehicles joined the fray, launching attacks on the dinosaurs to assist Link in the battle. Meanwhile, viewers lost interest in the ongoing scene, captivated instead by the excitement surrounding the video game console in Shinro Suzuki's hands. Simultaneously, the Kishin announcement continued, and it became apparent that the initial scene was merely an introduction. Many couldn't help but notice that Kishin had invested significantly just for an introduction. Chapter 215, KS1 Video Gameplay. The Kishin announcement persisted, transitioning to the animated backdrop of Super Mario's pipe-filled world. Mario skillfully leapt across the pipes, making his way to a modest wooden house belonging to Celeste. Inside, Shinro Suzuki occupied a chair, and the camera honed in on him. "Good afternoon, gamers," he greeted, addressing the audience directly. The camera then shifted to capture Shinro Suzuki holding a controller, with the KS1 visibly connected to the television. Excitement filled the viewers as they observed this setup. Meanwhile, Mario, having entered the wooden house, took a seat beside Shinro Suzuki. Unfazed by Mario's presence, Shinro Suzuki continued his speech, addressing the anticipation surrounding the Kishin announcement. "I understand some of you may have been concerned about whether it was just an April Fool's joke or a genuine unveiling of something groundbreaking in the industry." Rising from his seat, Shinro Suzuki inserted the CD featuring images of cars into the KS1. With a smile, he turned towards the camera, reassuring, "Rest assured, this isn't an April Fool's joke from Kishin." Closing the CD-ROM lid of the KS1, he initiated the boot-up process, and on the connected television, the KS1 logo appeared. As viewers tuned in, the video game came to life, showcasing a thrilling introduction featuring cars. Maintaining his smile, Shinro Suzuki addressed the audience, "Allow me to present to you, Kishin PlayStation 1. The announcement elicited excitement from the viewers. Following the game's introduction, the title screen displayed the Need for Speed, sparking anticipation among the audience as they sensed it to be a racing video game. The viewers witnessed Shinro Suzuki initiating the video game, eagerly watching as he selected a specific car model. As the Need for Speed commenced, the excitement among the audience intensified. Viewers at home marveled at the graphics of the racing game, recognizing a departure from the conventional 2D pixelated aesthetics of the Famicom and Super Famicom. Despite remaining a 2D game, the graphics exhibited a remarkable leap into a 3D-like realm. The outstanding performance of the KS1 became evident through the seamless fusion of gameplay and cutting-edge graphics. Some viewers, familiar with the game Doom, drew parallels between its graphics and those of the Need for Speed on the KS1. The graphics, reminiscent of the revolutionary visuals in Doom on Apple computers, marked a sudden shift in an industry dominated by 2D pixelated and side-scrolling games inspired by Super Mario Bros. While the new game retained a mostly 2D pixelated style, it introduced a groundbreaking half 3D element. As Shinro Suzuki continued to play the racing game in a forest setting, viewers couldn't contain their excitement. Shinro Suzuki then demonstrated a unique feature, stating, "The view can even be changed to the inside of the car, look." Subsequently, the scene shifted to the interior of the car, showcasing the windshield, steering wheel, and even a speedometer. Viewers were captivated as Shinro Suzuki skillfully maneuvered the car, and the steering wheel in the game responded to his controls. This immersive experience made viewers feel like they were behind the wheel themselves. The gameplay proved truly fascinating, captivating even those who hadn't initially been interested in video games. Friends watching together found themselves drawn into the experience, sparking newfound interest in the world of gaming. Car racing had gained popularity among salarymen who typically favored televised sports and beers. Whether it was cars or horses, the thrill of racing had always piqued their interest. Now, with the introduction of a video game centered around car racing, their curiosity was genuinely sparked. Despite the variety of racing games available in the market, none could rival the graphics and gameplay demonstrated by Shinro Suzuki, the founder of Kishin, in the showcased game The Need for Speed. The camera then shifted to Shinro Suzuki, still comfortably holding a controller equipped with 2 joysticks. The design of the controller evoked thoughts of Celeste's special controller among avid video game fans watching the presentation. Shinro Suzuki grinned as he faced the camera, admitting with a scratch of his head, "Oops, seems I forgot that all you dear gamers were watching me play on this remarkable and revolutionary video game console." His words carried an apologetic tone, yet there was a hint of mischief that stirred jealousy among the viewers. Sawa Arita, joined by his professional gamer buddies, muttered curses through gritted teeth. "Damn you, Shinro Suzuki! You're mocking our passion." Another friend nodded in agreement, adding, "Shinro, just give us the release date." "Shinro, you bastard!" shouted another in frustration. Amidst the discontent, Shinro Suzuki continued to smile, announcing, "But fear not, as this is not the only video game I intend to showcase today. The video game I've just started, as you can see, is titled The Need for Speed. It comes partnered with the KS1 when you make a purchase. However, this is not the game that will harness the full potential of our KS1, Shinro Suzuki explained, leaving the viewers in confusion. Speculation buzzed among some viewers. Is he going to show us another remarkable video game for the KS1? Ah! Their speculation was on point as Shinro Suzuki produced CD covers. The camera zoomed in on the cover designs, revealing images of Kishin video game characters like Mario, Sonic, Pikachu, Pac-Man, Samus Aran, Celeste, Ash, and even dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. The title of the video game displayed on the cover was Kishin All-Stars Racing. The viewers, based on the title alone, anticipated a racing video game featuring Kishin's famous IP characters. Shinro Suzuki confirmed their expectations, stating, "That's right. The intro wasn't just an intro, it was also a teaser for this video game." He paused before elaborating, "You can race with other Kishin famous characters and even attack their cars. However, your adversaries aren't just the other racers, there are also dinosaurs in the surroundings that might step onto the racing track at any time." Shinro Suzuki continued his explanation, but some viewers began to grow impatient. "Damn it! Just show us the video game. Insert the disc already." Fans of Shinro Suzuki started to feel annoyed. Sawa Arita clenched his fists, unable to contain his frustration, and resorted to biting on his clothes. "Just play it. I beg you." Meanwhile, Sazuma, also engrossed in the spectacle, gripped the television tightly, ignoring Kumiko's reminder, "Dear, your eyes might get damaged from being so close to the television." Ignoring the caution, Sazuma muttered, "Just play it, you stinky brat." In the Yakuza Yamauchigumi, leader Obiyu and the other high-ranking Yakuza watched the television with anticipation. As anticipation built among the viewers, Shinro Suzuki continued explaining Kishin All-Stars Racing. However, their excitement turned to frustration when he paused and stated, "You can purchase this video game after the release of the KS1. Groans and exclamations of "We know!" echoed from the disappointed viewers. Their irritation grew as Shinro Suzuki, checking his expensive gold watch, remarked, "Oops! It seems we've exceeded the rented time slot on TV Asahi. Unfortunately, I won't have time to showcase the gameplay of Kishin All-Stars Racing." He apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, guys. It seems you can only experience the gameplay of this video game after purchasing the KS1 along with it." Upon hearing the news, viewers couldn't help but unleash a few curses at Shinro Suzuki. However, a sense of resignation settled in, realizing they had no choice but to purchase the KS1 and the accompanying video game to unveil its secrets. Sawa Arita, amidst his buddies, exclaimed, "Arg! Shinro! You're just fooling with us, aren't you? He's playing games with us. Making us wait to see him showcase the Kishin All-Stars Racing video game gameplay, only to crush our expectations." Meanwhile, Sazuma, also watching, couldn't help but mutter, "Damn brat." Then, as Shinro Suzuki continued, he announced, "The KS1 will be available in various stores and malls in Japan on May 1, 1994. The anticipation of the viewers was dampened as they realized the KS1 and its games wouldn't be released for another month. What usually seemed like a short period now felt quite long. Despite this, curiosity surrounding Kishin All-Stars Racing grew among viewers. Envisioning a mix of famous Kishin characters in a racing game, they speculated it might be similar to Mario Kart. This time, the inclusion of Sonic, Super Metroid, Pac-Man, and even the film adapted to video games Jurassic Park, which also had a few games for SKES, heightened their interest. Chapter 216, Evaluations. Following the Kishin announcement on TV Asahi, it sparked enthusiastic discussions among video game fans. "I knew it! I knew it! It's the latest Kishin video game console!" exclaimed a young man with excitement. "Yeah, I couldn't believe that video games have reached this level of advancement," his friend nodded in agreement. "With Kishin leading the way, new video game gameplay and graphics will bring players to a heightened experience," another guy exclaimed. "That's true. After the Kishin announcement, the captivating video game graphics and gameplay showcased on TV Asahi were featured in various newspapers and magazines. In a magazine called Nikkei Electronics, the Kishin announcement and the new video game console, Kishin PlayStation, were described. The graphics were highly praised, with the writer stating, "Kishin is truly the leading innovator in the video game industry. The video game graphics and the captivating gameplay showcased by the Need for Speed alone are wonderful. As a casual player of video games myself, I eagerly await the various games that will be released for KS1 in the future. Like other video game fans, I am also anticipating the game that wasn't showcased by Shinro Suzuki due to the limited time slot, the video game Kishin All-Stars Racing. Everyone is intrigued by the game that seems to be utilizing the full potential of KS1, as highlighted by the founder of Kishin, Shinro Suzuki." Another magazine, EE Time Japan, also features the Kishin announcement and praises the advancements and innovations of Kishin. Numerous other magazines focusing on electronics, technology, and recently established video game publications also feature and commend Kishin for its contributions to electronics development and innovation. As time passed, on April 15, 1994, the Kishin announcement reached the USA through magazines as well. However, media outlets in the USA remained strangely quiet regarding the advancements and new innovations of Kishin in the video game industry. As a result, some video game fans only learned about the Kishin announcement in Japan through magazines that focus on technology. Several recently established video game magazines provided additional details about the Kishin announcement that occurred in Japan. Many video game fans eagerly awaited updates on the Kishin announcement from various media outlets, wondering whether it was a Kishin April Fool's joke or a truly revolutionary product in the video game industry. However, their disappointment grew as they waited for news, and the media outlets failed to feature the Kishin announcement in Japan. Even Americans, solely interested in whether Kishin was playing a country or not, remained in anticipation, yet strangely, the media outlets didn't provide any latest news on the matter. This has left some people curious about whether Kishin really fooled a country for an April Fool's Day prank. Fortunately, some magazines provided detailed coverage of the Kishin announcement in Japan on April 1, and soon, word spread about the latest video game console from Kishin. Is this for real? KS1 and the Need for Speed Racing? What are you waiting for? Let's go to Japan! Exclaimed Juan, a wealthy Mexican living in America. "Bro, I don't have the budget," said his Asian friend. "I'll cover for you, don't worry," Juan reassured as he patted his friend on the back. His friend nodded and added, "The magazine mentions that KS1 will be released first at the Akihabara Kishin store. As soon as the clock in Japan hits 6 a.m., the store will immediately start selling the KS1, unlike other Kishin stores or some malls in Japan, which will have a delayed release." Upon hearing it, Juan immediately exclaimed, "Well, let's go to Akihabara." Tora Electronics. President Taro Ikeda and the new CEO of Tora Electronics, Idori Tanaka, along with the executives, discussed the capabilities of the KS1. "From our observations alone, Kishin has indeed surpassed our research on video game consoles with the showcase of their newly released video game console KS1, remarked Idori Tanaka, tapping his fingers on the table. "Indeed, I still find it hard to believe that a small company from 2 years ago has grown this much and even surpassed the research capabilities of the joint venture Tora Suzuki," President Taro Ikeda lamented with a sigh. "The graphics and the advancements in video game development at Kishin seem to be ahead of us as well," added one of the executives. Another executive added, "I initially thought that the Kishin's new video game console would still be inferior to the current console we are developing, but it seems that I am gravely mistaken." Idori Tanaka nodded and then remarked as he looked around, "You shouldn't underestimate the capabilities of Kishin." He paused and continued, "Kishin has proven itself to be on the same level as major companies, with their remarkable achievements in sectors beyond video games, such as Lego and the film Jurassic Park, and even in the entertainment music industry. This is enough to prove that Kishin is not just any company that we can associate with common sense. When the executives heard it, some disagreed with the CEO's words, while a few felt that CEO Idori Tanaka's words made sense. Kenji, also present in the meeting, found that his older brother's words made a lot of sense. He had observed Kishin since its inception, having been the sales associate in contact with Kishin from the start. Kenji recalled making a deal with Shinro Suzuki himself over the phone. At that time, although he couldn't reveal to others that he was Chairman Asahi's son to Tora employees, he held a sense of pride and a bit of arrogance. He even felt a sense of disdain towards Shinro Suzuki when Kishin was a small company, initially situated in a cheap and small apartment. Kenji remembered handling the delivery address for Tora components to Kishin at that time. Now, Shinro Suzuki and Kishin had grown to a point that seemed unreachable for him. Currently, Kenji was part of his brother's team, competing with Kishin in the video game sector. The Tora-Suzuki alliance significantly contributed to Tora's technological advancements in video game consoles and game development. However, this wasn't the sole reason for the Tora Corporation's decision to ally with Suzuki. Chairman Asahi Tanaka saw this as an opportunity for his sons to develop and grow. It was a chance for him to observe how his two sons would handle business and strategies. Chapter 217, KS1 Release. The KS1 video game console will be initially released in the Akihabara district in Japan. Consequently, on April 19, 1994, there was an influx of people into the Akihabara district, and the hotels in the vicinity profited the most. In Electric Town, a Kishin physical store was situated, and some people had already lined up there. The first people in line had even set up tents. Various Japanese media outlets went to the Akihabara district to capture these events, preparing to report anything that might be detrimental to the company, such as potential chaos. Simultaneously, foreigners were also heading to the Akihabara district for the same reason to purchase the KS1. Many people, including Japanese locals, opted to travel to the Akihabara district because the Kishin physical store there would be the first to sell the latest Kishin products. The Kishin physical store in Akihabara would open at 6 a.m., but other Kishin stores and malls where the products would be available had delays. In each of these locations, the delay ranged from a few hours to even a potential day. Consequently, a significant number of people opted to visit the Kishin physical store in Akihabara to purchase the KS1. This influx of people not only increased the footfall in Akihabara but also boosted business in the surrounding Electric Town. The popularity of the Akihabara district saw a considerable rise, prompting some individuals in the Japanese business world to discern Kishin's strategic move of acquiring a substantial amount of land in Akihabara. No wonder. Now, with the release of KS1, Kishin is also enhancing the appeal of Akihabara Electric Town, mused a real estate businessman, contemplating, I suppose Kishin has some ambitious plans. Well, I'm no stranger to bold moves, perhaps I should consider acquiring some land in Akihabara as well. His business partners were somewhat surprised when they heard that. However, it made sense, considering Kishin was a company gradually gaining recognition worldwide. As time passed, people in line at the Akihabara district Kishin store were now even eating there. They had brought friends along, allowing each person to take turns going to the bathroom or buying food while their friend guarded the line. This coordinated approach helped them manage the wait more efficiently. Certain media outlets captured scenes in the line where people, especially men, were developing stubbles of beard after being in line for just a few days. When some viewers in Japan, who weren't fans of video games, witnessed this scene, they couldn't help but comment, "Oh, this is purely disgusting. Why do they engage in such childish behavior? There are even some foreigners. Are they really so obsessed with this stuff? Phew. I'm glad I'm not obsessed with video games," said a man watching at home who was a fitness enthusiast. Ha ha ha, someone brought a toothbrush in the line. Some viewers observed that some men were using a toothbrush while waiting. Ew. When a reporter interviewed a man showcasing a bottle filled with urine, whether they were video game fans or not, they were disgusted. Casual video game players watching couldn't help but comment. These guys. Couldn't they wait just a few more weeks after the release of KS1? It would not only be convenient, but there would also be no more troublesome lines. A guy remarked. There will still be lines. His friend added. Well, maybe after a month, I guess. As long as the trend cools down, the guy responded to his friend's words. Time passed, and each day for the video game players currently in line in some stores and malls in Japan felt like time was gradually getting longer. In the Akihabara district Kishin store, as the release date of KS1 on May 1, 1994, approached, the lines also grew significantly longer. Within the line, some foreigners were present, and as they waited, they noticed construction in progress in the distance. When boredom set in for those in the line, they would pass the time by observing the construction taking place nearby. When the people in the line saw a truck bringing a statue of Mario and setting it up in front of the building under construction, they were a bit surprised. Oh! Look, it's Mario. What's a Mario statue doing there? I think that building should belong to Kishin as well, right? I think so too, considering Kishin already established some Pokemon cafes around Tokyo. I guess this time, they're trying to build a cafe themed with Mario. I guess. The video game players discussed among themselves as they observed the construction site. In fact, there are a few construction sites in various places in Electric Town. While many people wonder about them, they do not care, their primary focus is on the impending release of the KS1. Kinoshita Yoshi, also in the line, stood up with his hands in his pockets. Some people glanced at him due to his attire: an expensive black American suit, a golden watch, and black sunglasses, giving him an affluent appearance. There's still a few hours. Kinoshita Yoshi muttered as he settled into the foldable seat he had brought. He had also set up a tent for staying in the line, and his friends accompanying him slept in the tent. After a while, Kinoshita Yoshi's friends, dressed in summer clothes, engaged in conversation while sipping cola. There were still a few hours before the release, and it was currently 3 a.m. on May 1, 1994. There's still 3 hours, and I'm already filled with excitement. Noya Kunio exclaimed. Ajino Kichiro shook his head and said, "You're not the only one, Kunio." Kinoshita Yoshi also smiled as he observed Noya Kunio's furrowed brows. He pointed at some people who were even trembling with excitement. Whether they were trembling due to the cold or excitement was unknown, but Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends assumed it must be because of excitement. Soon, after 3 hours, it was finally 6 a.m. Satoru, the first in line, felt obvious excitement as he entered the store. He realized he was the first person in the Kishin store after weeks. "Good morning, sir," a saleswoman bowed as she greeted. "As you know, I'm here for KS1. Satoru nodded and said. "Of course, we know. And since sir is the first to buy a KS1, you'll be able to get a freebie," the saleswoman said with a smile. "Really?" Satoru exclaimed in a bit of surprise. The saleswoman nodded and then led Satoru to a specific section of the store, where a KS1 was displayed. Satoru immediately took it. "I know that it was bundled with the video game The Need for Speed, but are there more video games?" he asked the saleswoman who gave him the freebie. The saleswoman nodded and then took Satoru to the video games section. When Satoru saw the video games for KS1, he couldn't help but furrow his brows. As he examined and picked up the video game CD covers one by one, Satoru couldn't help but frown. There are only 2 video games for sale for KS1. Satoru couldn't help but say. In the video games section, labeled for KS1, there were only 2 titles, filling the lineup with just 2 video game titles. The saleswoman bowed and said, "That's right, sir. Unlike before, KS1's video game lineup consists of only 3, including The Need for Speed." Satoru couldn't help but lament a little. He was expecting a lineup of video games for KS1 and had brought a lot of money for a buying spree, but now, there were only 3 video games. But he wasn't too disappointed. He proceeded to buy the other 2 video games. One he knew was the video game called Kishin All-Stars Racing, and the other was called Resident Evil. Chapter 218, Kishin All-Stars Racing. Kinoshita Yoshi and his 2 friends purchased KS1 along with 2 other video games. Despite there being only 3 available video games for KS1, they weren't too disappointed. Simultaneously, Kinoshita Yoshi and his companions hoped for Kishin to extend the platform for KS1. Experiencing the KS1 video games firsthand will enable Kinoshita Yoshi to comprehend and assess the capabilities of KS1 and gain a thorough understanding of the video games themselves. Although The Need for Speed was showcased on KS1, Kinoshita Yoshi was able to at least observe the graphics and performance handled by KS1. Kinoshita Yoshi, along with his friends and their group of game developers, quickly realized that developing video games for KS1 would pose greater challenges unless Kishin provides the usual video game development toolkits to assist independent game developers in creating games for KS1. Following their purchase of KS1 and video games, Kinoshita Yoshi and his 2 friends headed to their company's small building. Upon entering the building, they were warmly welcomed by enthusiastic employees who were excited to see Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends carrying a KS1 and video games wrapped in Kishin packaging. Subsequently, Kinoshita Yoshi and his two friends proceeded to the main workspace for game developers. As soon as the developers noticed their boss returning, they greeted him and his friends. "Good afternoon, boss," greeted a young man as Kinoshita Yoshi entered, and other senior and junior game developers extended their greetings to Kinoshita Yoshi and his two friends. The game developers, noticing the Kishin wraps, immediately recognized what they contained but refrained from probing their boss too much, considering it was evident what was inside the Kishin wrap. After settling into a soft, comfortable chair, Kinoshita Yoshi slouched, massaging his forehead in exhaustion. His two friends also slumped onto the nearby sofa. "So tired," Kinoshita Yoshi expressed with fatigue. They had lined up at the Kishin physical store in the Akihabara district for days. Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends might have even smelled bad if not for the nearby public restroom near the Kishin physical store. Kinoshita Yoshi and his two friends take turns washing in the restroom. As Kinoshita Yoshi relaxed in a soft chair, his game developer colleagues observed their boss slumping from exhaustion. A young game developer, who had recently joined Kuma Games, quickly approached Kinoshita Yoshi and asked, "Would you like something to drink, boss?" Kinoshita Yoshi, with closed eyes that opened to reveal obvious exhaustion, looked at the young man. Upon seeing him, Kinoshita Yoshi nodded and said, "Oh, Kiro-kun." Kiro Tomagu nodded, pleasantly surprised that his superiors remembered his name. Kinoshita Yoshi then remarked, "Drinks, hey. Can you get me a coffee?" Kiro Tomagu promptly bowed and replied, "Sure." He immediately went to the nearby cafe outside the building, while his game developer colleagues observed him with shaking heads. They felt that Kiro Tomagu's enthusiasm exceeded the expectations of his role by serving his boss. Such a flatterer, that Tomo-kun. Some of the game developers couldn't help but think. After a while, Kiro Tomagu returned with the coffees he had just purchased from the nearby cafe. He also brought 2 coffees for Noya Kunio and Ajino Kichiro, both of whom expressed gratitude. As Kinoshita Yoshi took a sip of the coffee, he immediately felt a surge of energy. He smiled and announced, "As you all know, I just bought the KS1, and I'm here to examine the graphics and gameplay of this latest video game console from Kishin." The game developers grew excited upon hearing Kinoshita Yoshi, and one of them exclaimed, "Oh, we'll get to see the KS1, this is quite exciting." Kinoshita Yoshi and his 2 friends set up the KS1 and the television, connecting them. Soon, the television booted up, and when the KS1 followed suit, the Kishin intro animation was notably more refined and in 3D. "This is quite a fascinating intro compared to KES and SKES," Ajino Kichiro remarked with a smile. "Indeed, the animation is much smoother and more beautiful." Noya Kunio agreed and nodded. Kinoshita Yoshi acknowledged with a nod, then took the CD Kishin All-Stars Racing, and inserted it into the CD slot of the KS1. On the screen, a message appeared, "No CD detected, please insert a video game CD." The screen text transitioned to the booting video game screen. The video game started, and after a while, following the display of the Kishin logo, a 3D animation of dinosaurs roaming and the renowned Kishin video game characters riding various types of cars unfolded. Some drove sports cars, others opted for fancy ones, and even Mario was seen driving his car from Mario Kart. Mario, Sonic, Pikachu with Ash, Link, Zelda, and others competed with each other in a race, while some dinosaurs roamed outside the race track. Following the race, credits appeared, Pixar and Kishin animated. After that, the 3D animation concluded. Kinoshita Yoshi, along with his 2 friends and his video game developer colleagues, observed the scene. Kinoshita Yoshi couldn't help but exclaim, "There's even such 3D animation. It looks so good." His 2 friends and video game developer colleagues engaged in discussion. "It seems expensive just from the animation intro alone. The animation does look quite impressive. It has the potential for films. Yeah, but the cost will be enormous." "Hehe, it's Kishin. They don't care even if it's costly." "You're right about that. SHH. The video game is starting." Kinoshita Yoshi smiled as he listened to everybody's discussion. Then, he glanced at the controller and pressed the start button. The video game finally started, prompting Kinoshita Yoshi to input his name first. Subsequently, a list of options appeared, including 2-player mode, battling with computers, or story mode. Opting for 2 players, Kinoshita Yoshi connected the second controller, which was handled by Noya Kunio. Next, they had to choose from Kishin's famous video game characters. Kinoshita Yoshi picked Mario, while Noya Kunio went for Link. Soon, the racetrack with racing cars materialized. While there were other computer-controlled cars, the real competition unfolded between Kinoshita Yoshi and Noya Kunio. The graphics and gameplay were intriguing, featuring a split screen where Kinoshita Yoshi and Noya Kunio's cars were visible on the television screen. The 3D limited 2D pixelated video game proved so captivating that Kinoshita Yoshi and the others couldn't help but feel that developing such high-quality video games would be exceptionally challenging. And whether Kishin would provide development toolkits for independent video game developers was uncertain. Chapter 219, Video Game Companies' Worries. The gameplay of Kishin All-Stars Racing was highly engaging, especially during two-player competitions. "Oh, a dinosaur is approaching," Noya Kunio muttered as he maneuvered his remote-controlled car through the forest terrains. While Kinoshita Yoshi remained deeply engrossed in the video game, he couldn't help but think constantly. While the graphics remained in 2D pixels, there was still a somewhat constrained attempt at a 3D experience. Despite that, creating such a video game with the current technological capabilities proved to be challenging. "Kishin really took a leap in video game development," chuckled Kinoshita Yoshi. Indeed. The graphics of the video game were unlike anything before, and it seemed as if this game wasn't even programmed in assembly, nodded Noya Kunio. "Right. I hope Kishin continues its tradition of providing game development toolkits and hardware documentation as they have done before," Kinoshita Yoshi expressed his hope. Ajino Kichiro reassured, "Don't worry. We've been loyal to Kishin, and when Tora Suzuki opened their platform, we didn't make our games available there. Our video games will remain exclusive to Kishin." He paused, chuckling, and continued, "So, I believe Kishin should prioritize loyal companies like ours for the opportunity to receive their video game development kit and hardware documentation." Hearing this, Kinoshita Yoshi couldn't help but chuckle wryly, adding, "We never agreed to make our company's video games available on Tora Suzuki because of our long-standing enmity with Tora, not because of loyalty to Kishin." Ajino Kichiro chuckled, saying, "Yeah, but Kishin wasn't aware of that, right?" He paused and added, "Besides, we have a favorable relationship with Kishin as one of their video game companies." "Don't worry." Kinoshita Yoshi nodded in agreement, saying, "Right." The video game developers at Kuma Games, Kinoshita Yoshi's company, were also concerned about whether Kishin would indeed provide the video game development kit and hardware documentation. With Kishin being the sole possessor of technology and development for 2D, albeit limited 3D graphics in video games, and even the Tora Suzuki alliance lacking a comparable level of video game development, Kishin could potentially monopolize the advantages that the KS1 brings. Despite currently having only 3 video games available for the KS1, the video game fans weren't overly disappointed. These 3 games were pioneers, featuring exclusive 2D with limited 3D graphics, marking a significant breakthrough in the video game industry. It has even attracted the attention of media outlets in several countries across Asia and Europe. While news of this video game breakthrough hasn't yet reached the ears of ordinary video game fans in other countries, including the USA, and isn't widely known, it has already captured the interest of a select few. With certain media outlets in Asia and Europe featuring the KS1 and its remarkable the need for speed graphics and gameplay, some individuals are starting to show interest in Kishin's latest products, which may take months before reaching the European market. Some enthusiasts even traveled to Japan to purchase the KS1 and the latest video games. Within just a day of the KS1 and its 3 video games being released, it had already taken the video game industry by storm. Certain independent video game companies visited the Kishin physical store to personally experience the games before buying. They were particularly impressed by Kishin's Kishin All-Stars Racing, a racing cars video game where each player could outperform others with creative skills. For instance, Pikachu could attack with thunder, and Sonic's ultimate skill involved him leaving his racing car, carrying it with him as he sped through the race, avoiding other cars for 2 seconds. They could even fend off approaching dinosaurs at any time. However, despite being amazed, most independent video game companies shared a common concern. Their worry mirrored Kinoshita Yoshi's own whether Kishin would monopolize the video game development advantage or if they would continue providing the video game development kit and hardware documentation as usual. This concern was amplified, especially since many of these companies made their games available to both Kishin and Tora Suzuki. They were particularly anxious about whether Kishin might hold a grudge against them for extending their games to Tora Suzuki, a direct competitor of Kishin. While some independent video game companies with favorable relations towards Kishin were also concerned, their worry wasn't too pronounced. They were aware that Kishin took certain considerations into account for video game companies like theirs. But these independent video game companies were simply worrying too much. After all, Kishin would contact them later to collaborate on developing video games for Kishin. At Kishin Rule's headquarters, Shin and the others held a meeting concerning the independent video game companies. This happened because, within just a day of the KS1 and its 3 video games being released, the independent video game companies contacted Kishin expressing their interest in obtaining the video game development kit and hardware documentation. Some video game companies even made favorable offers to Kishin, hoping to acquire the latest video game development kit and hardware documentation. During the discussion with the group of professionals and executives, Shin remarked, "Video game companies with good relations will receive favorable offers, while those with their games available on our competitors' platforms will get standard offers. They shouldn't complain too much, right?" The executives didn't disagree. After all, this is business. In the business realm, offers often depend on the relationships between companies. Although Shin didn't harbor any grudges against video game companies making their games available on various platforms, he aimed for a business-minded approach. Meanwhile, some individuals who purchased the video game Resident Evil anticipated a gaming experience similar to Castlevania, a less frightening game. However, as they attempted to play and launched the game on their respective KS1 video game consoles, their expectations couldn't have been more off. What awaited them was not a family-friendly 2D pixelated side-scrolling game reminiscent of Castlevania or Thriller, but rather a 16-bit game that defied their initial assumptions. Only after starting the game did they come to realize just how mistaken they were. Chapter 220, Resident Evil. A young man, Sako Shigeru, recently purchased the video game Resident Evil without any knowledge of its story, as he hadn't read the manual. Sako believed it would be similar to the 2D pixelated side-scrolling gameplay of Castlevania, a game he enjoyed. Upon arriving at his family house, he was warmly greeted by his younger brother, Taro Shigeru. "Aniki, did you manage to get one?" asked the excited 10-year-old Taro. Sako Shigeru spotted his younger brother, nodded with a seemingly disappointed expression, and remarked, "No, I wasn't able to get one." He was eager to gauge his brother's reaction. Taro Shigeru responded with a saddened expression, adding, "Let's try again tomorrow." Upon hearing this, Sako Shigeru chuckled, saying, "Ha ha ha." Confused, Taro Shigeru observed his older brother's laughter and questioned, "Why are you laughing?" Still chuckling, Sako Shigeru replied, "You have no idea, do you?" He maintained eye contact with his younger brother as he posed the question. Still puzzled, Taro Shigeru noticed his older brother's hands behind his back, appearing to hold something. With a chuckle, Sako Shigeru revealed the Kishin wrap in front of his younger brother. Excitement filled Taro Shigeru as he exclaimed, "Oh! I thought you couldn't get one." Sako Shigeru grinned, ruffling his younger brother's hair. "Of course, I was just fooling around," he said to Taro, who pouted in response. "What are you waiting for? Let's play it!" Taro Shigeru eagerly exclaimed, grabbing the Kishin wrap from his older brother. Sako Shigeru smiled and watched as his younger brother headed to the living room. He followed suit, removing his shoes and socks. Upon entering the living room, he observed his younger brother unboxing the KS1, with the 3 CD-covered video games also being taken out. Sitting on the sofa in front of the television, Sako Shigeru continued to watch his younger brother enthusiastically unbox the KS1. He heard his brother exclaim in excitement, "Wow! It's the KS1!" Sako Shigeru remarked, "Of course it is. Just go and connect it so we can play." He watched as his younger brother nodded and promptly followed the instructions in the manual, connecting the KS1 to the television. Later, Sako Shigeru joined in to help with connecting the KS1 to the television. After a while, they successfully connected the KS1 and powered up both the television and the console. As the KS1 booted up with the Kishin logo introduction, the television screen displayed text indicating it didn't yet contain any CD video games. Sako Shigeru, holding the Resident Evil video game, then said to his younger brother, "Let's play this video game." Taro Shigeru examined the video game titled Resident Evil and quickly nodded, remarking, "Oh, it looks like Castlevania and Sweet Home, supposed to be horror-themed." Sako Shigeru concurred, saying, "It wasn't really scary, after all." "Okay." Taro Shigeru nodded in response. Subsequently, Sako Shigeru removed the Resident Evil CD from its cover and inserted it into the KS1 CD slot. After sealing the circular lid of the KS1, the scene on the television screen shifted. The 3D KS1 introduction kicked off, followed by the Kishin logo, and finally, the Resident Evil introduction. Sako Shigeru and Takeo Shigeru were taken aback as they witnessed a scene where the camera closely followed a man. Suddenly, the camera zoomed in as the man turned, and a brief, intense burst of blood animation flashed before returning to a scene where the camera focused on the man's face. His eyes widened, and the camera zoomed into one terrified eye, accompanied by the man's horrified shriek, "Ah!" Sako Shigeru and his younger brother exchanged glances, their curiosity intensifying while simultaneously sensing that this video game would differ from their previous experiences. Following the widened eye scene, the screen darkened, revealing an ID with the name Chris Redfield, and a right arrow prompt. Taking control of the controller, Sako Shigeru pressed the left arrow, and the ID changed to Jill Valentine, a woman. "Looks like these two characters are playable," Sako Shigeru remarked, opting for the male character, Chris Redfield. After selecting the character, a chilling sound effect, resembling a woman's choir, played, but instead of sounding heavenly, it took on an eerie tone. Upon hearing the eerie sound effect and experiencing the creepy atmosphere of the Resident Evil video game, Taro Shigeru clutched the pillow on the sofa in discomfort. Sako Shigeru noticed and chuckled, teasing, "Oh, I thought our brave Taro wouldn't be scared. What happened?" Taro Ikeda felt a bit embarrassed and retorted, "Shut up. I thought it would be like Castlevania, Thriller, and Sweet Home." "Hehe, you thought it would be a non-scary horror-themed game, hey?" Sako Shigeru mused before adding, "I thought so too." Subsequently, against a black background, text emerged accompanied by the tapping sound of a typewriter. 1998 July, appeared, followed by the text, Raccoon Forest. Below, a helicopter sound resonated, set against a dark night with clouds and the forest below. Then, the deep voice of a man echoed, "Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in the northwest of Raccoon City." After a pause, he continued, "We were searching for the helicopter of our compatriots, Bravo Team, who disappeared in the middle of our mission." Then a voice on the radio uttered, "Chris, shouldn't you have found it?" The man responded over the radio, "No, I haven't found it yet." The scenes gradually darkened, leaving Sako Shigeru and Taro Shigeru both creeped out and intrigued by the unexpected atmosphere of the Resident Evil video game. Even before the game officially started, it defied their expectations, already sending shivers down their spines. The scenes transitioned to a newspaper written in English. "Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City." The deep-voiced man paused before continuing, "There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people." Sako Shigeru and Taro Shigeru listened to the introduction, and then the cinematic scene unfolded, depicting a group of people, a mix of men and women, being pursued by a seemingly monstrous beast. The only visible aspect of the beast was its mouth, with sharp teeth and fangs, accompanied by saliva flowing from its mouth. The men and women, seemingly of Western origin, conversed in English. Fortunately, subtitles provided the Japanese translation, including the deep-voiced man in the intro who spoke in English. They were then pursued by an unknown creature in the dark forest night, some men attempting to fend it off with gunfire. The creature's perspective, seen through the camera, revealed the men shooting towards it. The scenes transitioned to a mansion at night. The camera focused on the door opening, emitting a creepy creaking sound. The man's voice continued, "There are only 3S.T.A.R.S members left now. Captain Weskier, Jill, and myself. We don't know where Barry is." Following this, a text appeared, "Cast." An American narrator introduced the actors and actresses. Next, the scene shifted to a 2D pixelated yet 3D limited environment, where characters engaged in conversation. Sako Shigeru and Taro Shigeru exchanged glances as the video game finally commenced. Taking control of the man, they experienced a third-person perspective, revealing the entire area as their character explored the mansion. Upon entering different rooms, a 2D pixelated door-opening animation played before returning to the gameplay. Chapter 221, Iconic Scene. The gameplay of Resident Evil showcased a unique experience for Sako Shigeru and Taro Shigeru. As they explored various rooms, Sako, gripping the controller, encountered a chilling scene that would linger in his memory and that of his younger brother. While navigating the in-game character through a hallway, the atmosphere abruptly shifted. A haunting soundtrack accompanied the sight of a bald, menacing figure kneeling beside a man already immersed in a pool of blood. The bald figure appeared to be consuming the flesh of the prone man. As the camera drew nearer, the bald figure forcibly extracted a piece of flesh, the unsettling sound effects intensifying. Slowly turning its head towards the camera, the bald entity revealed a scar on its face, accompanied by the ominous growls of a zombie. The eerie sound resonated deeply with Sako Shigeru and Taro Shigeru, instilling a sense of terror after the unsettling scene. Subsequently, the focus shifted to a prone figure, accompanied by text that read, "He's Kenneth from the S.T.A.R.S. Bravo team." The narrative continued, stating, "Now he's become the mere shadow of his former self." As the game scenes returned, a zombie with a raised hand stood up and approached Sako Shigeru's in-game character. "Run!" Taro Shigeru exclaimed, urging Sako to skillfully evade the approaching zombie. Sako, driven by curiosity, approached the fallen man, discovering a valuable item for his in-game character. Sako Shigeru skillfully evaded the slowly approaching zombie, swiftly running away from the imminent threat. Despite feeling a significant initial fright from the unsettling scene of the bald zombie devouring the man, its head slowly turning back towards the camera, and its eerie eyes locking onto it, Sako Shigeru managed to suppress his fear during the gameplay. The zombie's deliberate, slow pace contributed to easing his apprehension. Similarly, for Taro Shigeru, who was merely observing the Resident Evil gameplay rather than actively playing, the fear factor was notably diminished. Taro Shigeru found entertainment in watching his older brother play the video game Resident Evil, even though he wasn't particularly drawn to this new horror genre. He enjoyed the experience of being an observer, suggesting ideas and expressing his opinions while his older brother played. As Sako Shigeru gradually acclimated to the gameplay, he began skillfully shooting the slowly moving zombies. On the other hand, those who initially played Resident Evil perceived it as an ordinary 2D pixelated game, reminiscent of Kishin's side-scrolling gameplay. However, once they began playing the video game during their KS1, they realized their initial misconception. The introduction was not only scary and terrifying but also shrouded in mystery. The gameplay, sound effects, and well-executed horror theme contributed to a captivating experience. A scene that left a lasting impression on players was when a zombie was shown consuming a man, followed by its head slowly turning towards the camera, its dark, frightening eyes staring directly at the player. Some players even felt as though the zombie was looking right at them, piercing through their souls. Within a few days, the iconic scene from the video game Resident Evil spread across gaming communities, becoming a hot topic of discussion. Simultaneously, video game magazines featured Resident Evil, highlighting its intriguing gameplay and captivating storyline, generating excitement among players. This was especially true for those gamers who had long sought a genuinely frightening gaming experience. Additionally, enthusiasts of horror films caught wind of Resident Evil, hearing about its horror-themed and scary elements. These individuals, accustomed to playing titles like Castlevania and other games labeled as horror, were initially skeptical. They remained uncertain about whether the descriptions of Resident Evil truly captured its frightening essence. Upon purchasing KS1 and the Resident Evil game, they were pleasantly surprised. The game proved to be genuinely frightening, particularly the iconic scene. This pivotal moment in the Resident Evil game was so impactful that it could easily pass as a scene worthy of a film. Despite being a video game sequence, it conveyed a cinematic quality that resonated strongly. Even film critics who witnessed this iconic scene lauded its impact, acknowledging its ability to leave a lasting impression on people. Meanwhile, following the release of KS1, both Tora and Suzuki acquired the console along with its 3 accompanying video games for thorough examination. Upon testing KS1 and its 3 games, they were genuinely impressed. Notably, the 3 video games stood out, surpassing those currently in the market, a feat expected, given they were designed for Kishin's latest gaming console. After personally testing KS1 and its 3 games, Idori Tanaka, a key figure in the Tora Suzuki alliance for the video game sector, directed the research team to reverse engineer KS1. Simultaneously, they continued developing video games, incorporating both 3D limited and 2D graphics. Simultaneously, video game entertainment companies began reaching out to Kishin, inquiring about the KS1 being an open platform for their games. As the days passed without a response from Kishin, these companies grew increasingly concerned. Unbeknownst to them, Kishin had already held internal discussions on how to address these inquiries. After a few weeks had elapsed, despite the video game entertainment companies continuing to profit from their games on SKES and the Tora Suzuki platforms, impatience grew among them as they eagerly awaited the opportunity to develop games for KS1. After a prolonged wait, the video game entertainment companies were finally contacted by Kishin for negotiations. As the word from Kishin reached them, a sense of excitement started to permeate among the companies. Simultaneously, they felt a bit nervous about how the negotiations would unfold. Amidst overthinking, the day for the negotiations finally arrived, marking the beginning of discussions. Kuma Games was among the first video game companies to engage in negotiations with Kishin regarding the inclusion of their games on the KS1 video game console platform. Kinoshita Yoshi was in for a surprise, as the Kishin trademark video game developers introduced him to a significantly advanced video game development kit, surpassing his expectations. Chapter 222, VG Engine. Kinoshita Yoshi visited the workspace of Kishin Trademark, where a professional game developer introduced him to the prototype of the KS1 game engine and computer video games. Mr. Yoshi, this software developed by Kishin will enhance your ability to create video games more efficiently and easily, the developer explained. He paused before adding, while programming is still necessary, it will be significantly more straightforward compared to manual coding, such as in KES or assembly coding. With a look of astonishment on his face, Kinoshita Yoshi nodded, thoroughly impressed by the Kishin game engine software. He noticed that the computer running the software was an Apple computer. Although Kuma Games predominantly used HP or Philips computers with Microsoft OS, if it was deemed essential for the Kishin game engine software to operate on Apple computers, Kinoshita Yoshi was determined to replace their existing computers with Apple ones. This is the software that enabled the development of video games such as Doom, The Need for Speed, Kishin All-Stars Racing, and the Resident Evil series, explained the Kishin game developer. Kinoshita Yoshi, along with his two friends, expressed keen interest as they observed the video game developers at Kishin working on their latest project. They considered themselves fortunate to be invited to the Kishin workspace, providing them with a unique opportunity to witness the developers in action. Before them unfolded the groundbreaking game engine for the revolutionary video game console, KS1. This experience is truly remarkable, and while Kinoshita Yoshi is uncertain about the reasons behind being invited to the Kishin workspace, which may involve significant confidential projects, he is aware that it indeed contains confidential information. Curious, Kinoshita Yoshi addressed Mr. Han, the middle-aged man from Kishin who would negotiate the development of video games for KS1. Mr. Han, may I inquire about the reason for bringing us here? We haven't even signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding the information we might encounter. Lee Han, the one who brought Kinoshita Yoshi to the Kishin video game developers workspace, simply smiled and confessed, "I'll be honest with you." Pausing for effect, he added, "It wasn't my idea at all." Observing the confused expressions on Kinoshita Yoshi's and his friends' faces, Lee Han explained, "Mr. Suzuki believed that Kuma Games is a video game company that can be trusted. Additionally, he doesn't see any issue if you choose to share what you witnessed here with others." "Why?" Kinoshita Yoshi inquired curiously. Lee Han smiled and explained, "Our software, VG Engine, is specifically designed for video game development, and games created through this software will only be compatible with KS1 or Apple computers, as it was intentionally designed that way." Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends nodded thoughtfully, though a lingering doubt remained about the potential replicability of such software by other companies. Lee Han continued his explanation, "Moreover, the VG engine encompasses various elements, textures, and video game objects within its framework. It utilizes line DEFS for its level geometry, allowing you to incorporate sprites, elements, and designed video game objects through the 2.5 designing program. You can manually create animations within the VG engine as well." Lee Han, demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of Kishin's game engine, conveyed, "Kishin dedicated significant time to research this software, making it challenging for even experienced computer companies to replicate its quality." Upon hearing this, Kinoshita Yoshi and his two friends nodded thoughtfully. Kishin seemed unfazed by the possibility of rumors spreading, understanding that mere words couldn't prompt other companies to quickly replicate their sophisticated game engine software. While the idea and concept were appealing, the execution posed a significant challenge. As they exited the Kishin video game developers workspace, Lee Han assured Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends, saying, "Kuma Games maintains a strong relationship with Kishin, and I wouldn't deceive you regarding the offer for developing video games for the latest Kishin console, KS1. Kinoshita Yoshi and his two friends nodded eagerly, and Kinoshita Yoshi expressed his gratitude, saying, "We are thankful to be selected as one of the video game companies to develop games for KS1. Lee Han acknowledged with a smile, stating, "One of the reasons we decided to share the VG engine with the founders of Kuma Games is because Kuma Games will soon utilize the Kishin software for video game development on our KS1. Upon hearing this, Kinoshita Yoshi and his two friends were genuinely excited. While they had anticipated the collaboration, they also held an expectation that Kishin might offer a distinct video game development kit. To their pleasant surprise, they were thrilled to learn that they would have access to the latest game engine currently employed by Kishin. Observing the delighted expressions on the three men, Lee Han explained, "However, the data from your video game development using our VG engine software will be required to be sent to our database for the ongoing improvement of our VG engine software." He paused and added, "Additionally, a modest royalty fee for using our VG engine software. Does that arrangement suit you?" Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends exchanged glances before Kinoshita Yoshi nodded with a smile, responding, "That's acceptable. Kishin deserves it for providing us with such a exceptional and valuable software that must have taken years to develop for video game development." Recognizing that Kishin could have kept the technology exclusive, Kinoshita Yoshi and his friends believed that sharing the video game development data and offering a small percentage of royalties for using this cutting-edge software was a fair trade. Unbeknownst to them, the value of the video game development data to Kishin was immense. The data would play a pivotal role in enhancing the VG engine, gradually transforming it into a powerhouse akin to the Unreal Engine from Shin's previous life. In a subtle irony, these video game companies were unknowingly contributing to Kishin's advancements. They were essentially paying Kishin for the privilege of using their software while simultaneously participating in the continuous improvement of that very software for Kishin. VG Engine is an enhanced iteration of the Doom engine. It is both a standalone development and intricately linked to the ongoing Unreal Engine project that Kishin is spearheading. Chapter 223, Progress. As Kishin began engaging with video game entertainment companies, some swiftly concluded negotiations, while others lingered due to Kishin presenting a standard offer. As these video game entertainment companies became aware that Kishin was extending favorable offers to other companies, they perceived it as unfair. However, when Kishin pointed out that those receiving favorable offers had strong relations with the company, unlike some with only neutral ties. The video game entertainment companies with neutral relations are those whose games are accessible on every console, including Kishin. Conversely, companies exclusively offering games on Kishin enjoy more favorable relations due to this exclusivity. As a result, those opting to make their video games available on various platforms, including Kishin, can only expect neutral relations and standard offers for developing games for the KS1. While video game entertainment companies with neutral relations felt a sense of unfairness, they acknowledge the situation and reluctantly comply with Kishin's offers, as they have no alternative if they wish to utilize Kishin's latest VG engine for video game development on the KS1 console. Despite some regret among those who expanded their games to platforms other than Kishin, many found considerable profit in this decision. They express a hope that Tora Suzuki will soon introduce their own gaming consoles to compete with Kishin's KS1, along with providing a video game development kit for their consoles. However, it appears that Tora Suzuki will take some time to catch up with Kishin, as both Tora and Suzuki are currently not prioritizing their video game sector. Suzuki is directing their attention to their latest electronic product, called the DVD, while Tora is engrossed in the development of their newest cellular phone. As of 1994, global cellular phone subscriptions alone have surpassed 100 million. Despite there being approximately 250 million casual players worldwide, encompassing both video game consoles and arcades, in terms of business, cellular phones remain the most profitable compared to video games, which are generating only limited excitement primarily among the younger demographic. Regarding the DVD, Suzuki and the other three companies believe that it will thrive in the market due to the decline in VHC sales. With superior video quality, enhanced storage capacity, and interactive features, DVD is poised for success, making it a product almost certain not to flop, provided there are no issues in marketing. Meanwhile, a few days after the agreement between Kishin and the video game entertainment companies, at Tora Suzuki's dedicated research facilities for video game console development, Seiki and Idori Tanaka oversee the progress of research and discuss the development of their video game console. During their conversation, Seiki gradually senses that Idori Tanaka, the son of the chairman of Tora Corporation, is excessively confident in himself. While Seiki outwardly maintained a kind and approachable demeanor, beneath the surface, he harbored a strong dislike for Idori Tanaka's presumptuous behavior in asserting leadership within the Tora-Suzuki alliance in the video game sector. Idori Tanaka exuded confidence as he conversed with Seiki, even projecting a sense of authority when interacting with the son of the Suzuki Group's chairman. In Idori's view, Seiki Suzuki appeared to be a mere good-for-nothing son of the Suzuki chairman, a sentiment he extended to Shiko Suzuki. Ultimately, Idori Tanaka believed that only Shinro Suzuki was truly worthy of his attention among the chairman's sons. As their discussion concluded, Seiki and Idori Tanaka parted ways. Seiki headed to his company's office and reached out to his brother. As Idori Tanaka made his way to the Tora Electronics CEO's office, he settled into a plush chair for comfort. Shortly after, a knock echoed through the room. Knock, knock. Idori Tanaka straightened his attire and rose to open the door, revealing his secretary. Oh, it's you, Idori Tanaka acknowledged, nodding before returning to his seat. Observing his boss's fatigue, the secretary silently watched as Idori Tanaka reseated himself. After a moment, the secretary stood up and bowed respectfully to Idori Tanaka. His secretary then informed him, Mr. Tanaka, we've just received intelligence that Kishin has offered a compelling and useful video game development software for the entertainment companies working on the KS1. Surprised, Idori Tanaka queried, software. The secretary affirmed and proceeded to detail the mechanics and functionalities of the software based on the received intel. As Idori Tanaka listened to the description, he became immediately intrigued and expressed a desire to utilize the software provided by Kishin. Simultaneously, he couldn't help but contemplate the development of a similar software. However, recognizing the impossibility of obtaining Kishin's game engine software source code, even if they acquired the software, he acknowledged the need to develop their own. Yet, he pondered the challenge, knowing that, despite their efforts, Kishin would still maintain a lead in game engine software development due to their extensive experience. Kishin. You always manage to surprise me, Idori Tanaka muttered with a wry chuckle. Honestly, Idori Tanaka was eager to meet with Shinro Suzuki and discuss business, rather than entertaining his brothers who is less appealing for business matters. Reflecting on the software development, Idori marveled at Shinro Suzuki's remarkable ideas in video game development. A pity that Kishin remains a private company. I really want to explore their confidential projects that Tora could incorporate in the video game sector, Idori Tanaka mused, shaking his head. Meanwhile, in the USA, most American casual video game players remained unaware of Kishin's latest video game console and games. Even if they knew, frustration loomed as the release of the KS1 in North America was months away. Some enthusiasts, aware of the delay, even traveled to Japan. In Rebold Technology, Albert Chandler, having showcased their latest phone at tech exhibitions, deliberated the release of their KRS-2. While it couldn't compare to IBM's Simon personal communicator, it offered affordability and practicality for commercial use. Albert Chandler had already discussed this with Shinro Suzuki. When they delved into the Simon personal communicator's advertisement, they couldn't help but find it excessively pricey, around $1,000. The thought crossed their minds, who would be willing to purchase it? Albert Chandler could foresee the potential downfall of IBM's product. Chapter 224, Disney. Meanwhile, on South Buena Vista Street in Burbank, California, at Walt Disney headquarters, CEO Mark Wilkins was engrossed in discussions about the company's business portfolio and this year's films. The Disney films slated for release in 1994 included The Return of Jafar, Rudyard and Kipling's The Jungle Book, Angels in the Outfield, White Fang 2, The Lion King, and more. During the meeting, they delved into marketing strategies, distinguishing between films with high and low expectations. Mark Wilkins expressed, given Aladdin's popularity among children, there's little doubt that its sequel, The Return of Jafar, is poised for significant profitability. The executives reached a consensus, with one stating, for the marketing, as usual, we've chosen Mattel for toys and McDonald's and Burger King for restaurants. Another executive interjected, that decision has already been finalized. What about The Lion King? Upon hearing this, Mark Wilkins remarked, honestly, I harbored doubts about the film's potential success. However, I anticipate the box office results won't be too shabby. The executives nodded in agreement. While The Lion King was not deemed subpar, there lingered uncertainty as it was animated by their less experienced team, raising questions about how well it would resonate with the audience. In terms of marketing the animation film, we should seek a toys manufacturer that offers favorable terms and is cost-effective for The Lion King, suggested one executive. Mark Wilkins and the others nodded in agreement. Another executive added, "I've heard that Kishin Merchandise, a toy manufacturing company, provides more favorable terms compared to Mattel." However, a different executive pointed out, while Kishin Merchandise is gaining popularity in the States, Mattel still holds a more family-friendly and influential position among families with young children. To this, another executive responded, "True, but Kishin Merchandise is also family-friendly and influential, particularly with families having younger children, thanks to their video games, action figures, and Lego products." Another executive chimed in, "Is Jurassic Park considered family-friendly?" Besides, Mattel has established its presence in the toy industry for years, unlike Kishin Merchandise, which has only been around for about a year or two. "Well, I believe it's acceptable to collaborate with Kishin Merchandise for manufacturing the Lion King toys. After all, they've proven their competence by successfully marketing Jurassic Park, right?" remarked another executive. Although the suggestion made sense to everyone, there was a sense of reluctance to partner with a competitor in the film industry, especially Kishin Pictures, even though both Kishin Merchandise and Kishin Pictures were subsidiaries of Kishin Rules. Mark Wilkins then stated, "I suppose there's no harm in having Kishin Merchandise manufacture the Lion King toys for marketing purposes." With that, the discussions regarding the toy marketing for the Lion King concluded. Despite choosing Kishin Merchandise over their usual partners like Mattel and Playmates Toys, they made the decision based on reports that other companies were turning to Kishin Merchandise for toy manufacturing due to better terms. However, the uncertainty remained about whether Kishin Merchandise could replicate the marketing success of Jurassic Park. For other Disney animation films slated for release in 1994, Disney opted to partner with another toy company, Playmates Toys. Meanwhile, at the Kishin Merchandise branch in the USA, Reynold MacArthur was genuinely surprised and astonished when contacted by Disney regarding the manufacturing of toys for their upcoming animation film. While Kishin Merchandise had already established partnerships with various companies for toy manufacturing, including WWE and others, Disney reaching out to them was somewhat unexpected. Typically, Walt Disney exclusively collaborated with toy companies like Mattel, Playmates Toys, and Hasbro, seemingly overlooking Kishin Merchandise. The fact that Disney approached Kishin Merchandise for a partnership in manufacturing toys for their upcoming animation film came as a surprise to Reynold MacArthur, especially considering his son's admiration for Disney. As customary, he engaged in discussions with the executives of Kishin Merchandise regarding the potential partnership. A few days after Disney had reached out to Kishin Merchandise. In Minato Ward, Tokyo, Japan, Shin lay in his specially spacious and luxurious CEO suite within the Kishin Rules building. Upon learning that Disney had contacted his toy company subsidiary, Kishin Merchandise, for the manufacturing and marketing of their upcoming animation film, he was somewhat surprised. Upon learning that Disney wanted Kishin Merchandise to manufacture and market the animation film named The Lion King, Shin was even more astonished. "Isn't this like the saying, 'A pie falls from the sky'?" Shin couldn't help but chuckle as he held the paper report. Reflecting on Disney, Shin recalled that Steve Jobs had also partnered Pixar with Disney. Considering Shin's current shares in Pixar and his CGI and motion capture company's collaboration with Pixar, he couldn't help but be suddenly reminded of Disney's significant presence in the picture. Due to his busy schedule, Shin had become increasingly absorbed in the development of the video game sector. Only now did he recall that Pixar's animated film Toy Story was set to release in 1995, with Disney contributing to the project. Shin shook his head and remarked, "Perhaps Kishin will have more interactions with Disney in the future." He chuckled wryly, thinking about the peculiar man with the veggie smell. Both Shin and Steve Jobs held high expectations for Pixar's Toy Story. While Steve Jobs may have been focused on potential profits, Shin anticipated that the film would not only revolutionize the world of 3D digital animation but also pave the way for integration into future video games. Currently, Kishin Apple was immersed in developing their own phone, while Rebold Technology remained oblivious to these developments. While Rebold Technology diligently worked on developing cellular phones based on Kishin's ideas, drawing inspiration from Nokia's designs in Shin's previous life, Kishin Apple took a different path. They focused on crafting phones with a resemblance to IBM's designs. Despite Shin being aware that this approach might not be as immediately profitable, the emphasis was on advancing technology, incorporating touchscreen capabilities, and introducing other features that would lay the groundwork for future smartphones. Moreover, this strategic direction wasn't just about phones. It was a crucial step in shaping the future for Kishin's handheld video game consoles. Chapter 225, Browser Wars. The advertisement for KRS-2 was initially launched in the United States. Revolt Technology holds more influence over KRS products than Kishin, despite Kishin being the major shareholder. The company is controlled by Albert Chandler and his co-founders, all of whom are American. As Revolt Technology is a USA-based company, the release of the cellular phone will begin in the USA and subsequently in Japan. Despite Kishin's promise not to impede Albert Chandler's and his co-founders' control, Kishin can still influence and propose ideas to the company. Given that Kishin won't excessively hinder the company's development, technologies researched jointly by Kishin and Revolt Technology will be accessible to Kishin. Currently, in the USA, Americans accustomed to carrying their phones were delighted to see the KRS-2 featured in advertisements. Designed after Shin's previous life's Nokia 3110, it boasts a much slimmer profile compared to other cellular phones in the market, including the KRS-1. Many individuals are already expressing interest in purchasing the KRS-2, despite its unavailability in stores. The KRS-2 has made another small but noteworthy advancement that has captured attention in the cellular phone industry. Simultaneously, in Japan, Tora has announced its latest phone. While slimmer than their previous models, it doesn't quite compare to the KRS-2. Observing the latest offering from Kishin and Revolt Technology, there's anticipation that it will yield profits similar to or even surpassing those of the KRS-1. Despite feeling somewhat disheartened that Kishin, along with Revolt Technology, has once again introduced a groundbreaking phone into the market, there's no time for envy. After the release of the KRS-2 on June 13, 1994, the focus will shift to evaluating Kishin Revolt Technology's latest phone. As many people began upgrading their phones with the purchase of the KRS-2. Simultaneously, the cellular phone competition intensified in the market, while a similar scenario unfolded in the Internet world. At present, the Internet was slowly gaining popularity, with approximately 16 million to 20 million users worldwide. However, the majority of Internet users were concentrated in first world countries that could afford computers and Internet access, with fewer users in other countries. In the Internet realm, a war was also underway, the browser wars between Mosaic and Netscape. The competition began in 1993, with Mosaic initially gaining popularity among users. However, Netscape entered the scene and swiftly attracted a significant number of users away from Mosaic. As a result, wars erupted between the two browsers, leading to intense competition that drove innovation and improvement in each browser to gain an advantage. Over time, it became evident that neither one emerged as a clear winner. In terms of small victories, Netscape seemed to have a slight edge over Mosaic, attracting a slightly larger user base. The competition spurred the browsers to become more user-friendly and accessible. While many still struggled to comprehend the intricacies of the Internet, browsers, and websites, the technology continued to attract more users each day. In fact, some investors and brokers on Wall Street gradually recognized the potential of the Internet. A middle-aged man on Wall Street named Peter Lynch, who managed the Fidelity Magellan Fund, recognized the potential of the Internet long ago. In 1993, he attempted to delve into the World Wide Web, WWW, but was disappointed to discover that a company named Kishin was funding WWW and had already become its major shareholder. Upon learning this, Peter Lynch sought to understand the story behind how Kishin became the major shareholder. He approached the CEO of WWW and discovered that the young CEO of Kishin, Shinro Suzuki, personally reached out to WWW and other Silicon Valley companies expressing interest in investing. This revelation left Peter Lynch deep in thought. Initially, there were other servers on the Internet before WWW, but it was entirely unpredictable that WWW would eventually gain more advantages over them. Shinro Suzuki. He recognized the Internet's potential. Discovering the potential of the Internet wasn't extraordinary, but pinpointing the potential of WWW before me. Peter Lynch mumbled as he gazed through the transparent walls of the building floor, capturing the city below in all its glory and charm. He couldn't help but ponder the Japanese young man, Shinro Suzuki. It felt like a kind of wonder. From Peter Lynch's investigation of Shinro Suzuki so far, the young man initially immersed himself in video games before expanding into toys, entertainment, films, and eventually, cellular phones. With the Kishin and Apple alliance, it appears that the young man was also broadening his interests to include computers. While Peter Lynch found it incredibly ridiculous for such a man to be so ambitious, he was surprised and astonished at Shinro Suzuki's success in his endeavors thus far. When almost everyone in the business world doubted and questioned the decisions of the Japanese young man, he ultimately prevailed. Looking at it from another perspective, Peter Lynch was almost certain in his life that either Shinro Suzuki was extremely lucky or an incredible genius. However, even an extraordinary genius wouldn't be able to replicate the business achievements of Shinro Suzuki. Moreover, from Peter Lynch's perspective, Shinro Suzuki seemed unfinished and was laying the groundwork for other ventures, such as the computing processor industry by funding NVIDIA. Whether these businesses would ultimately succeed remained a question. Peter Lynch observed that Shinro Suzuki faced fewer failures than successes. He even began to suspect whether Shinro Suzuki somehow knew the future developments or if he was simply exceptionally forward-thinking for his time. Certainly, forward-thinking also requires luck, but either way, Peter Lynch was gradually becoming interested in Shinro Suzuki. Meanwhile, although he couldn't invest in www, Peter Lynch wanted to try his luck with Netscape, the browser that was gradually gaining a small advantage over Mosaic. While Netscape was a private company, getting in touch with its founder, investing, and funding the company was a possibility.
Thanks for listening.